Gordon Smith, good evening from Denmark, you lovely people. He's first on, or at least among the first. Stingray up in Seattle. Michael Colcliffe in Port Stevens in Oz in Australia. Welcome, Michael. Jay Rendell from windy White Bear Lake, near where our guests are, standing by. Our guests today, Erin Burry and Blake Middleton, as you will know, talking about ice boating. I think it's about 18 degrees in Minnesota this morning. Jamie Hutchison in Venice, Florida, where it's nice and warm. Ed Worley in NorCal. We don't have Julia with us today. She sends her regards and her love. She's taking another day off. But we will get this one now on the road. Welcome.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our show number 496, Tuesday, the 15th of February, the day after Valentine's Day. I trust everybody had a great Valentine's Day and a nice weekend since we were with you on Friday. I will have with us in a moment Erin Burry and Erin Burry and Blake Middleton with us in a moment. Live via Skype from Minneapolis, up in Minnesota, in Scout Country and also Ice Boat Country. Delighted to have them with us today, and I'm going to jump right into this because it's going to be a fantastic show. It's going to be cover a lot of topics: hard water sailing and, of course, soft water sailing from Europe to Australia and everywhere in between. Welcome. On the starting line, just since our show last Friday, I'm sorry to have to report this for those of you who were with us supporting the Cincinnati Bengals. But bravo, Zulu. Congrats to the LA Rams, who came from behind to win Super Bowl, the Super Bowl on Super Bowl Sunday. LA Rams 23, Cincinnati Bengals 20. And I know a lot of you in SoCal are excited. And also, interestingly, a lot of people in the Midwest and the Great Lakes area where I'm from, particularly Michigan, this guy who's the quarterback for that team, this guy, Mr. Stafford, was played for the Detroit Lions, and the Detroit Lions have been in the, shall we say, in the cellar forever. And he comes 1 year to the LA Rams and not only goes to, but wins the Super Bowl. So congratulations to the LA Rams and to any of you who are supporters of that. You know, in San Francisco, we don't like LA. We don't support teams from LA, and that's why I was supporting the Bengals in part. Plus, we have a lot of friends in Cincy in that part of the world. Bravo, Zulu. This is a nice Bravo Zulu because we've been covering this story in this class for quite some time. And Bravo Zulu to Team Andu, who are the 2021-22 Australian 18-footer champs, the skiff champs. This is the 100th year of that championship on Sydney Harbor, and they have come through again. We were watching them in the New South Wales Championships, but the Andu team this past weekend of Sev, Jarvin, Matt Stenta, and Sam Newton, famously good sailors, crewing. They are the 2021-22 100th Australian 18-footer champs. They finished the championship on Sydney Harbor with a 5th and 3rd last Sunday in the two final races, the final race counting double points and non-discardable. I like that. Giving them a 6-point win. And overall second place were Smeg. No comments on that name, anybody, because Julia's not here to wave her finger at us. If anybody, Blake is making, we'll make no comments about Smeg. The second place team, Michael Coxon, Ricky Bridge, and Zach Barnabas on 22 points. And third was Noakes Sailing, Sean Langman, Ed Powies, and Josh Perebski on 33 points. Bravo Zulu to everybody. This is a fantastic event. Those of you who'd ever have a chance to see it, go have a look at the Ideens, the Sydney Harbor 18s, the championship final on Sunday. Bravo Zulu again to everybody involved. There were 23 entries. Yeah, there it is in the top line there. 23 entries, and a good time was had by all. Speaking of Aussies and great Australian friends, you saw the picture that was sent live during the show last week of our Fozy, both. Jody Shields there on the left, And on the right is his captive. He's captive not because Jody's got him under arrest or anything, but Leo Takahashi, the SailGP team member for Japan. And because he's Japanese, at least his mom is Japanese, his dad's a Kiwi, Rob Fry. And they are at Jody's place because of COVID restrictions and quarantines and not being able to get back into New Zealand. And it looks like they're not having any fun at all. This was also this past weekend. That, of course, is Jody. And what's he doing? It looks like he's teaching, or coaching at least, Leonard Takahashi on is that a moth or a wasp? I'm not sure which. Never a dull moment on Lake Macquarie. In Wanji, up north of Sydney. Bravo Zulu to them as well. Bravo Zulu also to our longtime friend, artist Jimmy DeWitt. Jim turned 92 on Sunday. I think we talked about that a little bit during the show. Jim is the artist who has painted any number of pictures here in the Beach Street Yacht Club, including this one of the Trimaran, the winner of the 2010 Cup in Valencia, Spain, that Stingray covets. He's offered to buy it from me, but I can't let it go, I don't think, at any price. Jimmy DeWitt, a Renaissance man. He won the Mallory Cup back in the 60s. He was one of the first men's champions to have a woman in his crew. Another terrific sailor here from the Bay Area. Jim is members of Richmond Yacht Club in St. Francis and probably a couple others. Turned 92, and he's now a painter and artist, sailmaker. I don't think he's making sails anymore, but what a wonderful guy and terrific friend. I hope all of you yesterday on our Monday had a happy Valentine's Day and you were floating somebody's boat. And by the way, today is Singles Day, International Singles Day. I guess after Valentine's Day, the singles thought they needed to have their own day, which is a nice thing, I guess, as well. Bravo Zulu also to Scuttlebutt, North America, to Craig Lewick, his dad, Tom Lewick. They published, I guess today or yesterday, their 6,000th issue, going back to the 90s when Tom Lewick started that. I mean, as the internet was coming into play, he started an email newsletter to his friends, and I was one of them, telling jokes, circulating jokes. Well, most of Tom Lewick's, this is Craig's dad, who's also in his 90s, and Tom was sending jokes around to all of his mostly sailing friends. And then he started putting in snippets of sailing news, which was kind of cool. And that was the birth of Scuttlebutt, which he put out himself for years. And then his son, Craig Lewick, has taken it over. And they're up to now 6,000 issues. That's, that's 5 days a week. Bravo Zulu to them. Scuttlebutt North America on 6,000 issues. Also, what is today? Not quite Minnesota, but just north of Minnesota. This is Canada National Flag Day. In 1965, Canada decided they wanted to have their own flag, not have the British Commonwealth or the Union Jack in their flag. So that is Canada's National Flag Day today. Happy Flag Day to all of our, I can say Canuck because I have a lot of friends who are hockey players and sailors. My wife's a Canadian. You know that old joke, right? What position did she play? I won't repeat the joke because every time I do, Blake would give me the finger, or he would wave his finger. He might give me the finger too. I don't know. But I won't, he knows Leslie, and we won't make any jokes about Leslie or the Canadians today, although the Prime Minister up there continues to, I think, dig himself deeper into a hole. These truckers are not going to leave. And Bravo Zulu to Ontario and to some others. Apparently the police chief quit in Ottawa, said, I'm not going to enforce your silly rules. I'm not quite sure how that was going down. But those of you who are in Canada, Bravo Zulu to your truckers who seem to have gotten the Freedom Convoy, not only keep on trucking, not only there, but across the world. Let's check in on some comments. Joe Holtzman, now, Tom. An old sailing friend from the Great Lakes area now lives in Estes, Colorado. Clark Chapin, some of my Canadian friends still think that the flag looks like a beer can label. Suddenly, I'm thirsty. Of course, the maple leaf, the red maple leaf. Freedom Day, Stingray is saying, up in Seattle. Hello from Salem, Mass. Chris Exley. Chris and I are working on a future show together. Thanks, Chris, for your efforts on that. Ted Ryman in Cape Town, in the Republic, the RSA, Republic of South Africa. Jonathan Frank is saying, happy birthday, Jimmy, meaning Jim DeWitt, the artist whose painting is behind me and adorns other corners of the Beach Street Yacht Club in San Francisco's lovely Marina District. Ken Saban is watching from Western Lake Erie in Toledo. Can't wait to see the ice boating segment. He is a great old ice boat sailor, along with the Griner family and a few others from that corner of the Great Lakes. John Emmett, who has sent his usual report in, superb report. Good evening all, quite a busy day. Get to be back home in time to relax for Sailing Illustrated. Tom, I sent that photo you asked me for, I guess. No hiding from me. Yeah, I'll see if I can dig that photo up. When Emmett sent his video in, he didn't have a photo of himself in the video. It was just all voiceover. And I thought, geez, I wonder what's happened. But he sent a photo, and I'll see if I can dig it up during the show. Warren Schasser, Brisbane, Australia. Morning, Tom and Julia and everybody else. By the way, we've got that nice flowers over there. One of Julia's secret admirers sent those flowers here. They found them on the stoop of the Beach Street Yacht Club here yesterday afternoon. So we'll put them on her desk, and I'll take them up to her in the Commodore's quarters later today. Clark Chapin, who's our navigator, says, note from the nav station, the last time that Blake Middleton was featured, the featured guest was October 8th, 2019. So, Blake, you had that right. When we were doing the tech check today, the Skype thing, you said, I don't think I've used Skype. I'm going to bring you guys on. Let's get right into it. Welcome to the show, Erin Burry and Blake Middleton.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Hi.
October 8th, 2019 for Blake. And Erin, this is your first time on the show, but you've been watching for some time, I understand.
I have, yes. So this is kind of exciting.
How do you and Blake know each other? Because you, Erin, it's never polite to ask a lady her age, but I know that you're about the age of my daughter, Meg Ehman, so that would put you give or take 30. And Blake is not quite as old as I, but he's north of 60. How did you all meet? Blake, how did you meet? You're the one who said, let's put Erin on the show.
Go ahead.
Well, I end up running sailing races on Lake Minnetonka 6 days a week, during the summer half of the year, and for both the Wayzata Yacht Club and the Minnetonka Yacht Club. And Erin is a regular sailing for both clubs, actually, but I most often saw her sailing in the catamaran fleet. She's on an F-18 and would always wave and talk. And I took some pictures of her and her skipper that were actually amazingly acceptable.
Yes.
They were pretty good. So we've been talking ever since.
And Blake, when did we meet?
Tom, I ended up working for you, essentially, for USYRU, which is now, of course, US Sailing, starting in 1984. I just come off of a stint working as a coach for the U.S. Naval Academy, and I went to work as the assistant one design director at USYRU.
Well, that's when I sent Jonathan Harley out to L.A. for the '84 Olympics. He became our Olympic director and did a terrific job. Of course, we won a medal in every class during that Olympics and did well beyond that. Jonathan now is retired, but still alive and well. I hope he's watching. Welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us. And, of course, today's show, we're going to be talking about ice boating, DN ice boating in particular. Here are Blake and Erin. And the first question I'll have for the two of you, do we call it ice boating, which is what I called it when we grew up, ice sailing, which I see a lot of people are now calling it, or ice yachting, which is in fact the name of the International DN Ice Yacht Racing Association, right, Erin?
Correct.
So what do we call it?
I'd say ice sailing. That's what I was first told it was called, although the longer I've been in the sport and the more people I speak to internationally, the more I'm hearing ice yachting or ice boating. So if I ever have to kind of put something on the internet for it, I just try and do all three.
Well, I think you date yourself when you call it ice boating. And of course, are you going to change the name of your class from ice yachting to ice sailing? You're the international junior secretary or the North American junior secretary of the class, which means what? Preparing programs for young people?
Yes. So my job is to cultivate youth programming and help grow the sport, and also be available and help others who are interested in joining the sport, no matter how old they are, get into the sport and be available for that.
Okay, well, predictably, the first question Stingray is asking. Stingray, of course, is a just recently retired coder. He's a code jockey, super bright guy, and lifelong sailor up in Seattle, just retired from Boeing. He's saying, what does DN stand for?
The Detroit News. The history of how it got that name was in the on the earlier half of the 1900s. The Detroit News had this contest for the area for locals to submit their idea for an inexpensive, accessible, and easy to build winter sport. And the DN-sized ice yacht won. And now it's an international class.
And it's something that you can build in your garage, and it's slab-sided, and you take some plywood and some other things, and you can build it like John Emmett is saying, like the Mirror Dinghy, like the Optimus Dinghy, which was sponsored by, an Optimus Club? Somebody will remind me, in Tampa, Florida. Do you know, Blake, who sponsored the first Optimus?
That sounds right to me by recollection, yes.
Somebody will know. In fact, J. Frederick Bland, who's on here, is laminating a tiller today in Texas where it's 70 and sunny. He's working on a build for a boat that's actually remind us the name, James, the name of the boat that you're laminating, because it's, as Emmett says, I always think the cockpit looks like a coffin ready to go if it goes wrong. I think he's talking about the DN. But yeah, there's a lot to be said for these classes of boats that can be garage built. And are like the Optimus, like the DN, like the Mirror Dinghy, and any number. And the Mirror was sponsored, I think, by the Mirror newspaper, if I remember well, right, John Emmett? So we'll carry on. But again, if you're just joining us, we have Erin and Blake live via Skype from Minneapolis. What's the temp up there, guys?
I just checked. It's actually all the way up to 25.
Oh, 25. What's 25 in Celsius?
No,
Minus 3 or 4? Hey, yeah. Siri, what is 25 Fahrenheit in Celsius?
25 degrees Fahrenheit is minus 3.9 degrees Celsius.
Minus 4, so that's pretty close.
Yeah. A couple days ago, it was minus 8 or minus 9 or something like that when we woke up.
Minus 9 Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit, right.
Well, but this is Minnesota. It's the middle of February, for God's sakes.
Right.
You know, one of the things about growing up in Michigan is we didn't realize, and you probably, I don't know how much time you spent in the winter in Michigan, because you can tell somebody from Michigan because they put their hand up like it's the glove, the state of Michigan. There we go. With Detroit over here in the southeast corner and Ann Arbor outstate a bit, and then Lake Michigan over here and Lake Huron. But the weather comes across, from this side, comes across from the west, goes across Lake Michigan, it picks up all that moisture, and we have lake effect snow on the west side of the state, but then the rest of the state is just bloody gray from November until April. I remember coming to the Congressional Cup the first time and seeing sun in March and cars that don't have crud all over them, salt and sand and everything. Oh, God. And the other thing about Michigan, you fall on your key, it freezes at night, thaws during the day, gets up to 35, 40, above freezing. Everything melts, slushy, awful. Then it refreezes at night, and you fall on your keister and break your elbow. But you don't have that problem in Minnesota. It's cold. It's nice. You have winter.
Just constantly cold or humid.
Stingray is asking, does everyone in Minnesota have the same colored eyes? What kind of a question is that, Stingray?
It probably relates to the kind of the Norwegian influence, the Scandinavian influence. A lot of the people who lived in Minnesota grew up in Minnesota.
Well, Swedish mostly, right? The Swedes are in Minnesota, the Germans are in Wisconsin, and the Norwegians are in the UP, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And actually, I'm Norwegian because of my mother's side of the family who immigrated. But I digress. That's Wisconsin with the thumb being Door County, Jay Rendell is saying. Okay, let's get on with our story and keep on with the DN story. I guess we're going to call it ice boating or what?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. Ice boating.
I grew up calling it ice boating. That was the term we always used.
Well, you're old.
I know.
But Erin's young, so we want to be with it. Jay Rendell's saying the ice boaters were Norwegian. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, the two of you are welcome. We're delighted to have you on the show, and you're representing both Minnetonka and Wayzata. Did I say that right, Blake?
Yep, correct.
The Wayzata yacht clubs, where you both sail both soft water and hard water. And this ice boating thing goes back a long time. Blake, you sent me this image.
It's an image from about 1904 on Lake Minnetonka. And that image, we believe, was from the Lake Minnetonka Historical Society, Excelsior Lake Minnetonka. It was on Excelsior Bay, which is on the southern part of Lake Minnetonka, maybe a couple miles from Minnetonka Yacht Club.
Yeah, and it was famously a lot of ice boating back in that era, even in Michigan. As you know, where I grew up, we had ice boating on our lake. I grew up on a little lake northwest of Ann Arbor, and we had an Arrow and a DN and some of the old stern draggers, the old polar bears, in front of our cottage, our house, our lake house, where we grew up. It was a year-round house. And when the ice was clear, which, as you all know, is not, you get 3 or 4 or 5 great ice days in the winter if you're lucky. I'd skip school to go ice boating. It was good fun. My grandmother, the late great grandma Ehman, on my dad's side, who was born in 1900, they had a little cottage on the lake. And one day they had an ice boat, a la this kind of a boat. I don't know if it had a jib or what the rig was even, but they had an ice boat, something like this in the early 1900s on our little lake. And my grandmother apparently capsized it. I don't know if she got the runner stuck in a crack. No jokes, please. Got the runner stuck in a crack and tipped over. And what'd they do? They broke the mast. They walked across the lake with an axe and cut down a tree and built a new mast. Have you heard of that?
Not recently.
Okay. We'll carry on here. By the way, we have some comments. Boat builders were Norwegian. Jay Rendell, who's your neighbor up there. David James is saying, when the Scandinavians have a party, the Norwegian brings the fish, the Dane brings the akavit, and the Swede brings his brother. Bill Wingrove down in Tampa, Florida says that from a Florida perspective, that looks cold. Jody Shields asking, is there fast, slow ice to race on? Yeah, Jody, we'll get to that in a sec. Good question. Gordon Smith, who's in Denmark, says, to a sigh of relief in Denmark, the social distancing rule of 2 meters has been scrapped and everyone can go back to being 5 meters apart. Clark Chapin is saying, these days, that would only work if you can find a carbon fiber tree. Are your masts, what are your masts made of?
Carbon fiber.
They are carbon. The DN masts are carbon now. Jonathan Frank replying to Jody Shields, shaved ice. Yeah, they're talking about shaved ice and cocktails. Okay, we go back to the story here. You both are soft water sailors as well. And see, I have that lower third fixed. When I did that lower third first time through, that it was one word, soft water, and it auto-corrected the software. Stingray would like that. Soft water sailing. Here's Erin crewing on a NACRA F-18 in the summer. Is that Minnetonka?
Yes.
What other soft water sailing do you do?
I started off on a 1984 Freedom 21 on Lake Superior with my dad.
Now that's cold water.
Yes. And my dad sometimes will admit that maybe that boat was too small for such a big lake like Superior. But he was good enough to make sure we didn't get hurt.
Did you ever sail in the Trans-Superior race?
I did not. It's definitely on the list. I almost did last year, but our skipper, a few days beforehand, decided he wanted to go do something else.
Well, that's one of the longest freshwater races in the world, as I understand it. It goes from the western end of Lake Superior up above Michigan, all the way, and it borders on what? Does Lake Superior border on Wisconsin and Minnesota?
Yes.
You have a little bit of a shoreline. And that race across Lake Superior to the eastern end of Lake Superior is a long, cold, rough, sometimes race. It's every other summer. Bill Martin from Ann Arbor, many of you on here will know or know of, he won it, I think, or at least was first to finish last time. Blake, how about you? What kind of soft water sailing are you doing? We know you're a famous PRO.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not doing much myself because I'm too busy running races 6 days a week. I grew up sailing scows primarily, but I also was a member of Wayzata Yacht Club starting a couple years after I got going. And Wayzata famously had the very first J-24 fleet in the world, followed a few years later by the very first J-22 fleet in the world. And I raced on both of those, as well as some Morse boats at the time for Wayzata Yacht Club.
Tell everybody who's not from the Midwest or from this country what Morse means.
Midget Ocean Racing Club, kind of a weird acronym, but that was what it stood for.
Which was and still is, a handicap system used, I think, primarily on the Great Lakes, but it's been around. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Milwaukee, but moved to Minnesota when I was 10. And we luckily, back then in 1969, were able to afford a small cottage on Lake Minnetonka. A couple doors away was Tom Burton, who was the national junior champion, the Sears Cup winner.
Yeah.
And just across the peninsula, a couple blocks away, was Bill Allen, who won a gold medal in the Olympics, careening with Buddy Motus.
And Bill Benson, the late, great Bill Benson. And
Right.
Billy Allen's a Fozy. He's often on here watching the show. He is a hockey player. Where did he play hockey? Not UM. I think he was out in Denver. It was either DU or.
I do not remember.
But now there's a guy. If he also plays guitar, he's a hockey player and a sailor and a guitar player. You don't find them much better than that, right?
Right.
Blake, you've done a lot of race management, particularly in this country, but also you've been down in Oz with Jody Shields at Lake Macquarie. I think you did 4 or 5 events down there.
I actually raced in the Heaven Can Wait race, which is a 24-hour race for cancer. And the first 2 years I competed in it. And in fact, the first year we won it, line honors anyway, at Adams 10. And then after the second year, I talked to the people down there and said, would you like race management help? And I said, sure. So for the next 6 years, I came back to do race management for the Heaven Can Wait race, which is just one of the most amazing races I've ever been involved in, period.
That's a great part of the sailing world, as you know, and Jody is on here again today. Did you party at all with Jody? Did you hang out?
Not at that time.
Did you know him?
I knew the name, but I don't know if we'd met or not, to be honest.
Well, he's, a bit of an international man of mystery. He was probably out and about commentating. He's a fabulous commentator. As you know, he's done commentating America's Cup and SailGP and whatever else. Jay Rendell is saying that Billy Allen, he did play at Colorado College, which is in Colorado Springs, CC, played hockey, that is, also a terrific sailor. Stingray saying, dang, this is a great show. Thanks, Stingray. We keep trying to get Stingray on, but he, talking about international men of mystery, he keeps his powder dry because he's been a denizen of the Sailing Anarchy forums, and I think he's afraid that some of those anarchists might show up. If they knew who he was and where he lived, they might show up on his doorstep sometime.
And Tom, I just saw a comment there from somebody about great charity.
Yes?
The Heaven Can Wait race, I just heard yesterday from one of the founders. I think they have now raised almost $500,000 for the Cancer Council of New South Wales.
That is the Heaven Can Wait race.
Yes, correct.
Fantastic.
Yep,
Well,
very.
bravo Zulu to them. Again, I've not been to Lake Macquarie. I'd love to go. Jody, I keep waiting for an invitation from Jody to go down there when COVID clears and hang out with them, because everybody, and look at the people. There must be something in the water. It's a bit like, tell me what, San Diego or Scout Country, because look at all the great sailors that Lake Macquarie in particular has turned out. The outer ridges and on and on and on.
First time I was there, I met Tom Slingsby and Nathan Outridge and some of the others. And I think there were 4 world mouth champions that raced in Heaven Can Wait race in the 1-lap dash one of the years. So,
Ken Saban in Toledo, Ohio. My father broke his backbone on his 15-meter, which is a class of ice boat. So they took a telephone pole, made a new one, sailed the next weekend. John Harper. Hi, John. They're busy. In fact, I don't know if you can see, I can see here on my computer screen his little icon, his little selfie, and he's sitting on some kind of an ice boat. He's saying they're busy in Europe looking for the best ice to do the World Championship starting this weekend. When they choose, everyone starts driving car ferries, etc. Yeah, that's the case, and we're going to have some more news about that from our guest today on how the racing works, because it is it's a little bit different because of having to find good ice wherever in the world you are. Kate Walker is in Saudi, I guess that means Saudi Arabia, and Monica Diaz, our regular, checking in from España, from Spain. Let's carry on with the slides and go now from softwater sailing to hard water sailing. This is not only your first ice boat, Erin, but I understand this is your first boat that you've owned.
Correct. It's the first boat that I've ever owned. While I actually do have an ACAT waiting for me in Canada. So when COVID restrictions lighten up a little bit more, I can actually go get that too.
How many DNs are there in the world? Do you have any idea?
Ooh,
I mean, your sail number is 5397, so if they're sequential across all the borders, across the countries, you got to have upwards to 6,000. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody else knows.
At least a few thousand. I know in North America, we've maybe got a few hundred people that are regularly competing, but internationally, I think it might be a quite larger number.
So this is your first boat, and it's an ice boat, but let's look at your first this is your maiden run, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Give us the voiceover. That's you in the foreground, right? What's that, a knight? What kind of a boat is that, a knight or a ski? It looks like a knight to me behind you.
I've got the DN, and then there was I think it was Knight behind there. Yep. And that was my first time sailing, my first boat. I have no idea how fast I was going, but I know that I was not fully sheeted in for a reason.
Yeah, you're not quite trimmed on. This is apparent wind sailing, like nothing else. I mean, these boats will go, what, 100 miles an hour?
Yeah, anywhere from, top speeds can be 80 to 100. I think regattas, we probably average 50 to 60 mile an hour for our races. And these boats, with how they're able to tune into the apparent wind, they go 3 times the speed of the wind. So if you've got 10 mile an hour winds, you're going 30 easily.
Mm. Well, Hamish Ross is saying, John Emmett's saying definitely looks like a coffin. Oh, by the way, Jody Shields, that's the race, the Heaven Can Wait race. That's the race that Nathan just broke the lap record on an IQ foil board, just over 2 hours. Emmett says this boat looks like a coffin. How many miles across? Stingray's asking, how many miles across is Lake Minnetonka?
The biggest open water, what we call the main lake, is approximately 1.5 miles by 2.5 miles, essentially. Although the lake is pretty big on the map, it's got about 125 miles of shoreline.
So it's a big lake by acreage.
Yes.
Ken Sabin is saying my DN number is 1744. John Harper is telling us that each country has its own numbers. So I wonder if that means you've built 6,000 DNs here in the U.S. One here's the ETNZ design team is working on a foiling ice boat. Jonathan Frank. Well, it is a foiling boat. In effect, it's on ice foils. It's on skates. That's why the friction is so low. That's why the speeds are so high. Hamish Ross, it's got to be on down in New Zealand in Auckland. There's a Fozy and been on this show a dozen or more times. It's got to be in all sailors' bucket list to go ice sailing one day. Magnus Wheatley. Hello, Magnus. He's saying that looks awesome. We're going to show you some more video. Is it miles per hour or knots? You do miles per hour, don't you?
I speak in miles per hour, but I ought to get better at knots.
I speak in knots.
But do ice sailors, do ice boaters, do you talk about wind speed in knots in the speed of the boat in kph or mph?
I think I've honestly heard it 50-50 in the United States.
Have you ever capsized an ice boat?
Kind of.
What do you mean kind of? I mean, that's like being kind of pregnant. Either you are or you're not. Or it's like me, you're either old or you're not. I'm not kind of old, I am old. So are you, Middleton.
It's right there.
To capsize a boat, I kind of picture it being almost all the way upside down and filling with water. These boats, you just kind of get thrown out of them. And sometimes they tip over and sometimes they don't. It's not typical though. With how the boats are built, they're built for the individual sailor. You can tailor it for your body weight, for your height. And if it's not tailored to your size, that's when it gets a little bit more difficult to handle. And so that's what happened when I capsized my boat, my plank, which we can talk about later. It just wasn't bendy enough for me underneath my weight. So it was very stiff. It was built for someone who weighs more than I do. And when a really big gust came in, it was 30-mile-an-hour gust.
Erin, excuse me, that's not a very good story. I'm sorry, with respect. Let me tell you about my first time in an ice boat.
I launched at 30 miles
Okay.
an hour.
I'm 9 years old. I'm the champion of whatever fleet I'm sailing in our little lake. And there's a couple of people on here who sailed at our lake. And I was Kianis Mas Macho and hockey player. And, I know this isn't that interesting. Couple little bits of instruction, go out, trim the main and go. So I did. Got down to the end of the lake, turned around. I jibed, which, it's easier than tacking, but nonetheless, it's speed. And the ice was clear. It was a nice day. There was plenty of breeze. And I jibed around, came around. I trimmed in the lighting. You have to trim in. The wind hit the boat, hit the sail, hit the main, hit the sail. The runner now really went way up high. And I thought I was going to capsize. And if my mother's on here, she will remember this because I've only admitted this to her, never to anyone else. I peed my pants. The runner went way up in the air. I was so scared. And, no one could tell because, you got overalls and coveralls and, longies, long johns on. But come on, Erin. Now there's a story.
I mean, I ate the ice with my face after being launched from my boat. Because my plank was too flat, I got bucked out and just pancaked and slid on the ice. And I actually, if you could pitch pole an ice boat, that's what I did. And the first thing that I thought after all that happened is I popped up and I made sure everyone knew I was okay. And then I was like, okay, now how's my boat? My boat can't be broken. I have insurance for my body. I don't have insurance for my boat.
Was your boat okay?
It was fine. I sailed it in, did not finish the race, but I sailed it in just in case because who knows? I wanted to make sure I didn't compromise the mast.
So you were eating ice chips?
Yes.
Jody Shields and probably just about everybody else on here eats ice chips every night during cocktail hour. I mean.
Yeah, but at 30 plus miles an hour and skidding across the ice like this.
And Julie Aarons in Cleveland is admonishing me. She's saying, Tom, that was rude. She is a guest on your show. Well, I'm always, that's why we need Julia here to shake her finger at me. But I had to tell that story. Scandahuvian Stingray saying, once you understand them, they're actually speaking tree lengths. Yeah, you don't really hike, John Emmett. He's saying hiking feels weird. John Harper is saying more DN racers in Europe, especially Poland. Karol Jablonski has the most world champion. That's true from memory. He was a helmsman for the Spanish AC Boya. Carol's a terrifically good softwater as well as hardwater sailor. Julie, I'm glad you're keeping track of me, though. She's my moral compass here on here. When I start getting too critical of Grant Dalton, she always chimes in as too, and I appreciate that. Bill Wingrove, TFE peeing his pants, the horror. Well, Jonathan, replying to Jonathan, just adult diapers. Okay, that'll keep everybody chitting and chatting. Jay Rendell is saying, I capsized, let me look at this. I capsized the DN on Lake Mendota, Lake Mendota's in Madison, Wisconsin, capital of that state, and where the esteemed University of Wisconsin is. Talking about good hockey teams, usually, not this year. Lake Mendota, and I flew out so my head was next to the runner. I had turned to avoid a potential open water spot. My knee was injured only a few days before the state high school hockey tournament. Not good. Jim Gluck. Hey, Jim Gluck is on. Great job, Erin, Blake. Tom, awesome to get ice boating on Sailing Illustrated. Indeed. Thanks, Jim, for tuning in. Stingray, my favorite only ice boating memory was on Lake Mendota, again at Madison, Wisconsin, and where the UW guys were seriously into speed. Pedro Foiling Sailor, our Fozy down in Sydney, been on the show a number of times. All laser sailors pee their pants. There is no head on board. John Emmett, I was told the leaning over was hiking. Maybe they were pulling my leg. I think they are pulling your leg. One of them anyway. John Emmett replying to Pedro Foiling Sailor, I do not. I made sure all the Typhoon wetsuits have a P-zip. Really? Well, you're not going to do that. I tell you, you do that, John Emmett, you use the P-zip in a 15 sub-freezing weather, you're going to freeze more than your P, maybe your PP. Now, Julie, you can shake your finger. Why are we doing this? Julie Erin says, you can't be rude to anybody and get away with it. I'm watching you. And we're going to put Julie over here and Julia's. Maybe that's where she learned it, and she can shake her finger at me figuratively on the show. Clayton Allen Embley, great show, great topic. That is not focused on enough. Thank you. Where's the longest ice boat run? Hamish Ross is asking. Where do you suppose that is? That in Siberia on Lake Baikal or one of those big lakes?
I think one of the big lakes for sure is Winnebago in Wisconsin, Lake Winnebago.
Yeah, but that comes nowhere close to Lake Baikal in Siberia, and they've got big. In fact, I've got a video from there. I think.
True, but in terms of a lake in North America, I think I know that at one point many years ago that the world speed record on ice boats was done on Lake Winnebago,
Yes.
out of Oshkosh, for sure.
Oshkosh B'gosh. And that's in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Where they make the Oshkosh, what would we call those? Not pullovers. What'd you call those?
Overalls,
coveralls. Stern steers, James Frederick Bland is saying, will make you steer your pants. Yeah, especially when you lose traction on the rudder. Do you want to explain it, or shall I? What happens with a stern steer?
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, excuse me, I need a touch of coffee here, but yeah, how long I'm on a row. We're just getting started. We're only 42 minutes into the show. The stern steers, which have the plank in front and the two runners on either side, and then the fuselage back to a rudder, a skate on the back that is in effect the rudder, and there's a tiller that comes off the rudder. You still lay down and you've got the tiller. There's lots of different classes, the polar bear, the 15 meter, and what are the other meter boats were. And you go sailing along, and they've started to realize, after sailing these boats for years, that as the boat sped up and the moment of effort in the sail plan was moving forward, the rudder skate would lift up off the ice, and if boat wasn't tracking, you'd immediately, in fact, it almost always did, because you had some weather helm, it just spun out. And that was indeed scary, as a couple of you have pointed out. Emmett is saying, replying to Pedro Falling Sailor, my sailors definitely didn't. It was one of the key things, recognize the posture for when I needed to five the girls. What? I don't know what that means. Okay, Julia Vetican is on. Julia is saying, tisk, tisk. Okay, we better press on here, guys, before I get into more trouble. Tell us about the DN specifically.
Well, the DN, it's the most popular ice boat class in the world. The minimum hull weight is 45 pounds, and you can go up from there. You can have different sails for different wind speeds, same with different runners for different ice conditions. It's supposed to be easy to create, to work on, and it may not be as fast as the Skeeters, which can go above 100 miles an hour, but these ones, they can get pretty fast with 80 to 100. The steering blade is in the front, and then you have two plank runners. So you have three runners in the front run, you call it a steering blade. The two in the back are the runners that are on the plank. And I mean, we do actually have something called a boom jaw on these boats, and we've been trying to figure out how to make them, and actually we've started making them with a 3D printer using PETG. So that red part that's coming out of the boom to touch the mast, that is a boom jaw, and it stops our mast and boom from rubbing and kind of chewing away at that mast.
Okay, well, let's keep describing, and I'll point out here on camera 4, this is the tiller, obviously.
Correct, that's the tiller.
And it goes down through, and that goes by a cable system normally, right? Is it cable or is it belt? Is it like a chain, a bicycle chain that goes forward to the forward runner that's the rudder, the steering?
So we have a steering post. And I mean, anyway, so your main sheet will run through your blocks, goes down, and then you actually run it through the tiller. so that you don't lose your main sheet. And you, of course, have blocks in the back. And your steering post is one of the most important parts of your boat because that's how you steer. So there is a part underneath that sticks out a little bit, and it connects the tiller and that steering blade.
It's sort of analogous a little bit to what a rudder post would be on most sailboats. Not exactly the same, but there's some relationship to it.
Well, for sure. And then this, back on cam 4, this is the main halyard, the halyard, which is a wire halyard. You've taken the rope tail off. It comes down, and you've got two different locations where the balls can go into the ball hook for the halyard. Do you actually, is that for different size sails? Do you use smaller sails in different conditions?
Yes. So your sail that you use can vary. For heavier winds, we use what is called a speed sail, and it's a little bit smaller. And then in lighter winds, you have an FO1 sail or a fuller sail. And we swap those out, not just based on wind conditions, but based on how we are as sailors and our body types as sailors. So in 12-mile-an-hour winds, I might want to switch to my speed sail and out of my FO1 sail before the 180 plus pound guys that I'm racing against would be swapping their sails out.
Okay, so in this picture, we got a lot of questions coming. You can see you don't really hike, but you do hang your windward arm over the side of the boat. You do a lean. You can see there, again, I'll go to cam 4. You can see this guy leaning to windward, right? You can see this guy's elbow over the side there on starboard tack. But the big question is, what's with these bendy rigs?
Well, the bendy rigs, your sail ends up kind of being like a grounded parachute because of that. It helps you stay on the ice while also helps you catch as much wind and build that apparent wind as possible. One of the reasons as to why these things can go so fast.
Yeah, the old straight mast days are long gone, and clearly this is a faster configuration. Everybody uses it. In fact, it gets some of the rig to windward. It reduces the tip vortex off the top of the sail, because you're talking about, again, we're talking about upwards to 100 miles an hour. What is that in kph? That's 160 kilometers per hour, give or take. Hey, Siri, what's 100 miles an hour in kilometers per hour?
100 miles per hour is 160.93
Yeah, it's 160. So, well, this is cool stuff. And Stingray wants to know how much do the runners actually dig into the ice in kind of average conditions, normal conditions? Not much, right?
No, not a whole lot. We got 20-degree Fahrenheit weather and the ice isn't wet or too chunky, you'll see a little bit of a line from where the runners were skating on, but it's not much. If it's sunny, maybe a little bit more. As I was getting to the later part of the season, yes, you kind of see some grooves, but not a whole lot.
What about sharpening the runners? How much time do you spend sharpening the runners?
That depends on how competitive you want to be. So the top sailors will be sharpening their runners before every single regatta. I'd say average maybe 2 to 4 times a year for the average ice sailor. I try to do it as much as I possibly can, whoever's willing to help me, because I do not have a sharpener of my own yet.
How do you sharpen them? Is it with just a file, or do you have some kind of a tool that you run them through, like a skate sharpener?
There is a whole tool, and some have kind of an automatic type skate sharpener system. Others, it's maybe a little bit more manual. But yes, there is a whole system and tool for it. And a lot of those are actually handmade and just designed by way of people share what worked for them, and then we build it ourselves.
Couple more comments here. James Frederick Bland is saying, bending the mast flattens the upper third of the sail. Yeah, it sure does, and lets it twist off. The mast bend looks like headstay sag. Baton Rouge is saying, yeah, it does, but of course it's the masts are obviously designed to do that. Bill Wingrove, tongue-in-cheek, is asking, how much is the speed in knots? Well, hey, Siri, how much is 100 miles per hour in knots? Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Okay, somebody will put that on there. Clark Chapin or Stingray. What other comments here? Great photos, Denise Ball. Oh, Denise Balzac down in the Caribbean. She has a famously good husband, a famously good sailor as a husband. Ken Sabin is saying Gretchen Dorian photos. Yeah, a lot of these, several of these are. James Frederick Land is also saying bending the mast lets you sail higher. I didn't know that. And Stingray is asking, is sailor weight a factor?
It's not an advantage or a disadvantage because you can tailor your boat to your size. So with the plank, the part that the rear of the hull is sitting on, you see that it should be bending like this underneath your weight, kind of like bird wings. And if it's too flat, you get catapulted like I did, and I had to learn the hard way that I needed to shave my plank down. So, we have shop days where we make sure our boats are being created and modified for who and how we are.
What safety gear? Hamish Ross is asking. Obviously, you're wearing helmets. We always wore helmets. And what other safety gear besides cold weather gear? I mean, you're not wearing any body armor, you're not wearing Kevlar vests or anything like that, or steel-toed shoes, or what are you wearing?
No, yeah, it's no Kevlar. Oddly, I seem to get more bruises during the catamaran soft water season than I do the ice sailing season. Maybe I'm not as good at one compared to the other. We wear spikes on our shoes so our feet can grip the ice so we don't fall while we're pushing to get started. Most importantly, though, it's the life jacket, the helmet, and the ice picks. Also, we do wear goggles like you would for snowboarding.
Yeah, that's a good point. Goggles are certainly safety. I mean, you have to wear goggles. And we're going to talk now about ice conditions. What is the ideal ice condition? And it's not just the black ice. It's something that most people wouldn't necessarily think about.
Yeah, the ideal ice condition is, ideally we need a minimum of 3 inches of ice. I think more people end up being comfortable with 4. It can't be too chunky. How it gets chunky is when there's slush, and then that refreezes overnight, and we get kind of you get a bumpy ride. You don't want it to be too wet, but
it's even worse when it thaws, and then it snows, and then it freezes. I remember that. Talk about chunky or bumpy ice. That's not fun, is it?
No. So the smoother the better, the thicker the better. And if there is a little thin layer of water on top of that ice, we like that because then we can actually read the wind. For the most part, you cannot read the wind like you would on a soft water boat.
Yeah, that's what J. Frederick Bland is saying. He's obviously done a lot of film of water on top of black ice. Maura Stevens checking in. She's a Canadian. Good afternoon from a sunny, cold, -10. I guess she means -10 F. Although maybe not. Maybe it's only -10 Celsius. That's nothing to write home about, Maura. In Halifax, Nova Scotia. Well, what about the racing? How do you conduct the races? This is obviously a start or a precursor to a start. Give us the countdown, then I'll play this video.
Yeah, so we line up, and then our race committee will start us. They'll say ready on the left, ready on the right, and then the fleet will be split in half. So half the fleet will go to port, half the fleet will go to starboard. And then once they get past the Darling mark, you can tack.
The which mark?
The Darling mark. So it's that's the equivalent of an offset.
That's halfway up the weather leg?
It's not halfway up. I mean, it's maybe 20 yards.
Oh, yeah. So it's not very far. But half the fleet starts on, well, we're going to see this in a video, but you lined up and half on starboard tack off to the left and half on port tack, so that you're not, and it's not a running start. It is a running start in the sense that you're pushing the boat after the starting signal, but it's not typical like fleet racing where you're going back and forth. That would be, we ought to do that sometime, Blake. You run some kind of a race where we've got a demolition derby and ice boats. We'd kill somebody where they're reaching back and forth. The starting gun goes off, they sheet in and go up.
Well, actually, when you get your boat started, it is a running bobsled start, and you stop running as soon as you feel your boat start to power up faster than you can run. And then you sheet in even more, and then you hop in and you just lay down and go for the ride.
Have you been watching the Winter Olympics?
No, because there's not ice sailing in it.
Well, that's what was my next question. That was good. We didn't even rehearse this. You've seen this new monobob?
Yes.
Single-handed women's event? Cool. The monobob. You know, there has been discussion over the years. I was on a subcommittee at IYRU along with Andy Kostanecki and a few people from Poland and God knows where else about investigating, about putting the ice boating into the Olympics. And of course, the logistics of finding good ice on any given weekend, let alone, you know, where would they ice boat in Beijing right now? They had to make all the snow, for God's sakes. Let me play this video because it's how ice boat racing works is the name of this video, and then we'll come back out and talk some more about the racing and ice conditions and finding ice and so on. Enjoy this. Erin or Blake, if you want to go ahead and talk over this, I don't think there's any voiceover. Here's the start when you said they're half are going to the left and half going to the right.
Yep, so half goes one way, half goes the other. We were given starting positions by our previous rankings.
The good rankings go in the middle of the ends.
There's the buoy. You see that? I'm going to stop it. I think I can stop it. Yeah, and go to camera 4. There's what did you call this buoy? The Darling buoy?
Consider the Darling mark, yeah.
Why is the Darling? Is that like Darling my Valentine or Darling some guy's name or gal's name or what?
I mean, sure, we could go with that, although I'm sure that someone's going to work one time.
Okay, so there's the Darling mark right there, lower center of the screen. I'll keep the video going. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I'll start the video over again so that we can see it.
And so the fastest or the highest ranking sailors, based on the previous race, are closer to the middle.
So the ranking puts you in the middle. You're not out on the ends then. So that's
correct.
And do you get to choose whether you're on the left side or the right side, that you're going uphill on starboard tack or port tack for the first little bit?
No, that ends up it's sort of random, sort of not. It's just because each side has its own numbers. So if you finish 10th, and if 10th is on the port side, then, or starboard side, whatever, then that's
I see. I just saw the numbers spread out there. By the way, John Harper is saying Darling is the name of the guy who came up with the idea. There's the Darling buoy. The Fozy are really a smart crowd, as Blake will know, having been on here, and one of those smart people. This is in Siberia, right?
I think that's is that Lake Baikal?
I don't know what lake it is. I assume it is, but there they come around the top mark, back down. I guess that's the Darling buoy that they're going around, going back uphill the second time. They do multiple laps, the video is saying. Mm-hmm. Magnus Wheatley is saying, oh, there's a big right shift. They sprint to the finish. How long are the races typically?
Well, you get 3 laps, or, if you're asking for a time, it depends on how fast the wind is sometimes.
Well, I understand, but order of magnitude, are they 2 hours long or 20 minutes long or somewhere in between?
Per 3 laps or per day?
No, each race. Each race.
Oh, each race? Yeah, 15 minutes on average.
You got to consult the race officer next to you.
They're fast.
Yeah.
They are fast. Cool stuff. It's a sprint to the ley line, usually. J. Frederick Bland, who's obviously done a lot of ice boating, notwithstanding he's done Texas and hot weather country. If you're just joining us here on TFE Live, it airs every Tuesday and Friday, most every Tuesday and Friday, 2000 UTC, this time of year, noon on Pacific time here on the West Coast. And when we get back to daylight time, it'll be 1300. But I am delighted to have with us live via Skype from Minneapolis, Erin Burry and Blake Middleton. Erin's an ice boat expert. In fact, she's the secretary, the junior secretary, meaning not because she's junior to somebody who's senior. She's in charge of the junior sailing in the International DN Ice Yacht Racing Association. Blake Middleton is a longtime friend. Fozy, who is an esteemed international PRO, has done all sorts of race management work. They are both up in Scow Country, which is also ice boat country in Minnesota. We're delighted to have them with us today. Erin, this is your boat, your first boat, hard water boat, but also your first boat in general. What is this device here next to your boat?
So that is a kick sled. And if you go to where they ice sail in Europe, they definitely have a lot of those. And so some of the American ice sailors took note of that, and now every once in a while you'll see one on the ice and they're hand built by us. It's like, basically like a little lawnmower motor, and there's a tire attached to it, and it has studs on it, and there's just a single throttle, and you steer kind of with your hips.
Okay, so let me just help me. This tire right here, it looks like it's off the ice. Does that somehow raise up and lower down?
Yes, so there will be little foot pedals actually where you just kind of put your feet on it, and then it just lowers that tire.
This is the foot pedal?
Yeah.
Okay, so you put your foot on that. That lowers the studded tire. It's a snow tire. It's not a snow tire. It's an ice tire.
Yeah.
And then these are just little wheels for pulling the thing and wheeling it around, I suppose, on hard land.
Yeah, getting it in and out of the trailer and whatnot. And we use these to either, if a boat needs to get towed because we ran out of wind, or we use them to also tow our boats out to the ice and bring equipment out. Or if you gotta zip really quick to go to the bathroom, you can hop on one of those. I actually bought a dirt bike this year with studded tires so that I could easily go to the bathroom whenever I wanted, didn't have to depend on anyone else's kick sled. I just want to be able to rip my little dirt bike over to the launch and go to the bathroom and then be back out in the pit so I didn't miss any races.
Does the dirt bike have studs on the tires?
Yes, it does. They're really sharp screws, and actually we align them ourselves so that they grip the ice and you can corner really well. They're a lot of fun. And actually there's a pretty big ice bike race scene in Europe and now in the United States.
What, as part of ice boating?
No, they're completely separate entities, and I decided to bring them together just so I could go to the bathroom in between races and not be late.
This has been a show about bathroom humor. Julia is sitting up. She's upstairs. She's not here with us today, as you all know, or most of you have been on, because she's a little under the weather, and she's got one of her secret admirers have sent her some Valentine flowers. But okay. David James is saying that Blake was also coach of the Stanford sailing team. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. For what? A long time, Blake, you were at Stanford. How long?
I was there for 9 years. I was the coach and director of sailing.
John Harper, who's a fount of information, is saying the time limit is 6.5 minutes per mile, slower than that, and the race is abandoned. So what's that mean in terms of minimum wind speed?
I guess I don't really know a number on that. I mean, I know that I can get my boat moving with 5 miles per hour of wind. Well, if the races are starting to take too long, they do just call it.
Well, you can get it going in 5 miles per hour, which is essentially the same thing as 5 knots, as long as the ice, you don't have a lot of snow on the ice. Let's talk about ice conditions and finding ice, good ice, and how that all works. But answer a few more questions before we go to that. Julie Ahrens is saying, it looks like so much fun. I wonder if any of the clubs in the Cleveland have ice boat races. I'm too old to start this hobby. Lake Erie is frozen now, but it is so cold outside, going fast would be very scary. Well, I saw something about near you, Julie. There was an ice floe that let loose, Catawba Island, which is one of those islands off around the corner there. So your ice is not all that secure on Lake Erie, I think, in the best of times. So is that true? There's not that much ice sailing on Lake Erie? Maybe at the western end at where Ken Saban is.
I sailed on Lake Michigan out of Green Bay once, and one of my stories, which I may tell if we have time, is about racing DNs on Lake Michigan.
Please do.
We want now?
Please.
Kind of relates to what Erin was saying. I was borrowing a boat from a guy who was a member of the sailing team at University of Wisconsin Green Bay, which is where I went to school, and it had rained just a little bit overnight and then froze, and so there was just a tiny bit of glass water on. So I actually could see little motions of wind ripples barely on it, and it was super fast conditions. And as we were going around the course, I think on my second lap around, I think there were about 20 boats, maybe 20 DNs. I was in about fifth, which was scary, better than I thought I would be. And came around the corner, I'm going downwind. And keep in mind, when you're going downwind, you're still trimmed in all the way. Main is all the way in. And because the apparent wind is so far forward. And a gust hit, and when a gust hits in an ice boat, you don't head up, you head down.
Right.
Otherwise, you will wipe out.
And then you will wipe out, and then you'll pee your pants.
No, I wouldn't do that.
That's what I did.
This is what happened in my case. I did, in fact, hike it, meaning I threw my shoulders, my upper body, gave it a quick main trim to bear off. And right as I hiked it, the tiller broke off from the post. Broke off, right off. And I went right over the side of the boat. And for the next moment, I realized I was on the ice with my right hiking shoe, basically, boot, caught between the bobstay and the hull, close to the ice. My left leg was holding off the running plank with the sharp blade just to the left of it. And I'm sitting there going, this isn't good.
How fast were you being dragged along on the ice?
Probably about 35, 40 miles an hour, I'm guessing, at that point.
Jesus.
And I managed to get my right foot out from the bobstay, which was caught in, and I kicked off of the hull and just flipped backwards and missed the running plank, thank God. Just missed the blade, I should say. And at that point, I just went into a tuck. I'm on my back, and I'm sliding and sliding and sliding. There's boats going past me at very high speed, very high speed, and I'm just sitting there. My eyes are almost closed. I'm just like, no, this is too crazy. And I went, and I'm not exaggerating, I went almost a quarter mile on my back, just on the slick ice, just kept going. I was tucked in. And when I finally came to a stop, I'm laying on my back, and I'm holding on to the tiller, which is pointing straight up for the air. Don't have the main sheet, thank goodness. And the ice boat had just gone a little bit, spun out and stopped on its own.
So it hadn't gone very. That was my next question. Was how was the ice boat in the next county, or
it
halfway
went,
across the lake, or
it went a quarter mile some other slight direction, the way I had turned it down, but it wasn't that far away.
Okay, a bunch of questions now. What are the injury and or crash stats, like Alex Kent is asking? Is it rare? Do you rarely have injuries? Do you have every regatta? Does somebody get hurt? What's the, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, no, it's actually really rare. I think we hear more often that someone spun out but stayed in the boat and it just slowed them down. I think all last season I was privy to one spin out that ended up with two boats kind of nicking each other, but that was it.
What happens when two boats crash? Does that ever happen? I mean, obviously it does sometimes happen. Does it happen port starboard crossing? Because that must be pretty catastrophic if they hit. Or is it sailing side by side and somebody gets hit with a puff and the windward boat has to try to bear away to keep intact? And by the way, in ice boating, the windward boat has right of way. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. So when maybe some of those right of way bits are forgotten in the moment, or I think more often, if any boats do kind of collide or bump each other, it is from someone spinning out on a mark rounding.
Clark Chapin is saying he thinks is ice boating in the Sandusky area of the South Shore Lake Erie. J. Frederick Bland saying, if you think this sport is too dangerous, there's always curling and drinking. I like to watch curling and the Olympic curling. Now that I understand it, I thought it was like shuffleboard. You had to get as many of your rocks into the middle of they call it the button, the target, but that's not it at all. I don't want to, those of you who are not watching it, you got to go watch it. It's kind of cool. I don't want to ruin it for you. Put-in Bay as well. That's a little island off the South Shore of Lake Erie. Alan Long is replying. Sandusky Ice Boat Club.
We have a guest.
Oh, come here. Come here. Yeah, there we go. There
We got the doggies there now. Now we'll never get your shot set up again.
We'll get it
Great
again.
story, Blake. Stingray is saying, replying to Denise Balzac, it happens lots. That's why PFD and ice picks. You don't wear PFDs in case you ever go through the water. I mean, I've seen people in ice boats go through in our little lake, luckily in shallow water near shore were some artesian wells that the ice they didn't realize, especially with a bit of snow cover. And they were in shallow water and the boat fell through. Have you seen anybody go through in deep water and lose the boat?
No, I've never seen that, nor have I even heard of anyone's boat sinking in such a way. I think the most I've heard about or have seen is the front of the boat, like the steering runner digs into an ice fishing hole or a little bit of a break in the ice, and they just kind of get wet.
Kind of get wet.
Yeah, the ice boat, it's just like everything else when you're on ice. You want to spread yourself out. You want to stand in one place. You want to be wide. The ice boat's already wide, so the weight is distributed over a bigger area. So when you go through, you don't go all the way through. You go part way through.
Yeah.
Well, my mother, I hope she's not on here watching. When we had a couple, 3 ice boats on our little lake, and we'd have the fishing shanties that were made out of black stuff that you put on the side of what do you call that? Side of buildings, and it's just they go out and they nail the stuff together and they put a little fire in there and drill a hole in the ice. And we always were careful to do this when there was nobody in the fishing shanty, but we'd take turns seeing who could go the closest to the fishing shanty with our windward rudder and not clip the fishing shanty. And one time Canis Masmacho went by and I clipped the fishing shanty with my windward rudder. Yeah, the thing, it's just a little 4 thing, and I don't know if it had a roof on it or not. I guess it didn't, but all 4 sides fell out. And there was a guy inside. I was such a crouton, and I stopped and I went over and apologized and said I'm really sorry and I didn't mean to do that. And but you're kids and we're idiots, and okay.
Hopefully he wasn't going to the bathroom.
Well, who knows what they were, who knows what they're doing in those ice fishing shanties. They're drinking, they got a fire and they're fishing, but, one never knows, especially in Ann Arbor. Tar paper. Thanks, J. Frederick Bland. Yeah, tar paper. That's what that is. Any other comments here? There's a lot of, you got to go back and read these comments, as Julia always says. By the way, Visa Karhusari, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Visa is I think that's a Finnish name. He's on YouTube. Watching, welcome. Raven Cord, Buffalo Board. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Jody Shields, more importantly, I guess you put your beers in the oven to stop them from freezing. Pedro Foiling Sailor, my new bucket list. If I can't ice boat, I want to race that thing with a rubber wheel and studs in its wheel. That could be a new winter Olympic event. Okay, now let's look at some rougher ice. This isn't exactly bad ice, but it's a little rougher. You've had some snow and it refroze. And you want to voice over this video as I play it, Erin?
Absolutely. So this ice was deemed to not be regatta quality, but
really?
Well, yeah, we could go out and play. And anyway, so I got the boat up to speed and I stayed standing to kind of scope out the area to make sure I wasn't going to hit any big chunks. And then I slid in. And it's almost full on sheet. And of course in chunky ice, I'm careful on the full on sheet. But if you see the runner that hiked up a little bit to my side shoulder there.
The one on the left as we're looking at it, the windward runner.
Yeah, so the windward runner. And when it hikes up, you keep the power on, and then you kind of just lean over a little bit and use your body weight to correct for the hike instead of depowering.
You want that runner just off the ice, the windward runner just a little bit off the ice, kissing it?
Yes, exactly. You want it kissing the ice and, of course, controlling it. And you see how my plank is flexing underneath my body weight?
Yep.
Again, because of that plank and how we build our boats for our bodies, that means that I can be just as fast as the men who are sailing against me or who I'm sailing against. I can keep up with them because I can maintain control of my boat. I can find its most optimized speed and use. And I think ice sailing is kind of the great equalizer when it comes to an athletic endeavor between men and women, or someone who's short or someone who's tall, someone who's 108 pounds or 180 pounds, someone who has MS and someone who doesn't. It's the great equalizer. You can do this sport almost no matter what. And if you need help getting something done, the community will help you get it done, and it'll get you in your boat, and they'll make sure that it is the safest possible boat and the fastest at the same time.
That is a really great point. And of course, it's true about our sport. And maybe that's why guys like Buddy Malgus and Billy Allen and the others from Scott Country know are so helpful to their fellow sailors. Maybe it's in part because of ice boat. I hadn't thought of that. It's a good point. Let me back this up one more time and play this video, because one of the questions is, sailing on ice like that, this is Stingray is asking, it must be loud. Let me play this without voiceover, and I'll bring the audio up to the full level, because it is loud, actually. Here, listen to this. Fabulous video. What was that? A GoPro up on the bow?
Yeah, just a little GoPro.
Do you call that the fuselage? Do you call it the hull? What do you call it?
We call it a hull. Apparently, some people call it a coffin.
Yeah, several people on here.
But if you're using the word fuselage, you're probably within an audience that is sailing jargon friendly.
What about goose droppings? That keeps coming up, I think, sort of tongue-in-cheek, no pun intended. But J. Frederick Bland, who's done a lot of ice boating, he was at one point number 45 in the country, apparently, ranked.
There's no geese at this time of year.
Yeah.
Okay. Magnus Wheatley is on again, or he's maybe been on the whole time. Wow, that's nuts. I want one. David James, I would think windage arrow must be an issue at those wind speeds, apparent wind speeds. So are you in clothing that is tight?
Some people do and some people do not. They're like, I think that some of the top guys, those sailors will wear almost what looks like a really tight wetsuit. It's a onesie kind of. And in between races, they wear these big parkas and they stay warm. Although I do also know a lot of fast ice sailors that don't wear the basically spandex suit, and they wear kind of what I'm wearing, where it's just their Team USA ice sailing jacket and snow pants, and they're just fine. They're just as fast.
Okay. Let's talk about this. You mentioned this. I'll play this video. You want to do the voiceover?
Yeah, I was putting the final touches on my plank. To protect the wood from your spiked shoes eating it up, some people put duct tape, some people put carpet. I put mud flaps on mine. So I just took some mud flaps from wherever, cut them up so that they fit my plank, and I just drilled them in. And not only do they stop my nice newly shaved wooden plank from getting scratched up from my spiked shoes, but they also stop me from slipping and eating the ice when I'm doing my start.
Eating the ice.
Yeah. You know what?
That's like a face plant?
Yeah. And so at some point, your plank gets all of the finishing touches. It gets shaved to your weight. And when you're figuring out how much flexion or like flex your plank needs, we measure it, and we ideally want a 43 millimeter flex underneath our weight.
For a given weight, you want 43 mils of flex.
Yes.
So a heavier guy or gal wants a stiffer plank.
Yes.
Got it. Interesting. What else? What other I mean, this like all of our sport is highly technical at the top end, at least. What else goes on? And you call this a D? What kind of shop day?
Yeah, we just kind of have shop days. There are some boat builders that are making these boats, so you can call up a boat builder, one of a few in the country, and they'll build you a boat for your size and what you want out of it. Well, a lot of them are hand built by the sailor themselves. And maybe a sailor doesn't build a mast, he gets his mast from someone else, but he builds his own hull. It is a lot of DIY. I mean, we wear snowboarding helmets, snowboarding goggles, or maybe I think I have snowmobiling goggles. And so the equipment is also DIY. We have these harnesses that we wear, and we wear rock climbing harnesses, and we fix bungees to them that will then fix to our helmets, so that when we're laying in that hull, we don't have to strain our neck trying to hold our own heads up. We just have a bungee that kind of holds it up.
Really?
Yes, for you. And it's kind of funny because you'll get out of your boat and you'll be walking around like this. You'll have to unhook and look at the world from this view again.
Oh, this show has been something else. We've got that reminds me of a joke or two too. Yeah, you're the Julia's nominated finger wagger. I didn't say the joke. Gordon Smith likes your tattoo. Will you show us your tattoo?
Yes, it's
real time here. What is it?
So I've got North and South America on my left shoulder, and then on my back we've got Europe, Asia, and Africa.
Oh my God.
And I have a chickadee on my chest for my grandma.
Any ice boats?
Not yet, actually. We're getting there.
You better work on that. Blake, you got to get her to the tattoo parlor for a ice boat, a DN, a big DN.
And I got a mermaid, of course. I have a swimmer who likes mermaids and water.
Okay, Gordon. Gordon Smith in Denmark wanted to see that. He said, nice tattoo work. Raven Cord, I don't know, Coord. He's up in Alaska, by the way. He's on YouTube. He said, that is so trick. Bungees and 43 millimeters, really refined sport. Cool.
Yeah.
Alex Kent wants to know, do you have Antarctica tattooed on you?
Not yet. I've got another session planned soon, so we'll get there.
Blake, you can get your finger ready because Jody Shields is saying any sport that your plank gets shaved and finishing touches and needs to be stiff. I'm in. Where do I get one?
You make it yourself.
Baton Rouge, Baton Cannon in Charleston is wanting to know, do people typically have spare boats? I don't think that comment's up earlier. Do people typically have spare boats and rigs to let people borrow to grow the fleet? I mean, if somebody shows up, is there a boat that you can hop? People will let you hop in their own boats, right? And
absolutely. But so yes, at some point Blake got to go for a ride on my ice boat. And yes, we do have extra boats. That's actually part of my job as the North American Junior Secretary, is to have DNs and ice opties available for those who want to give it a try. And there also is a whole network of ice sailors that if you just go onto any one of those ice sailing Facebook group pages and you say, hey, I'm looking to try it out, who's going to be in this area? And if there's clean ice there, you can meet up with someone near you. Now, I can't promise that there's always going to be clean ice. We definitely will travel thousands of miles for clean ice and to different countries just to find it. But if it's there, someone's going to have an extra boat if they love the sport. And if you do want to try, again, go to the Facebook pages. You can go, as it's my job, you can go on my Facebook or Instagram page and ask me, and I'll set you up with someone in your area, or I'll set you up with one of my spare boats or my regular boat.
Give us a URL, because an email or something that can be public, because Denise Balzac, who's on here, is saying, Erin, we need an ice boating winter camp. And she's down in USVI, I think. She's down in the Caribbean.
That's exactly what my job is. We're working on that right now here in the Midwest, of developing an actual ice sailing winter camp and winter, I guess, experience, whether you're from south of the equator or really far north of it.
Well, I commend it to anybody who's interested in it, and this is great to have you on. I'm learning a lot. I'm sure everyone else is too. And I've been doing this since I was, well, peeing in my pants.
So my URL, if you just look up on Instagram, Erin Bury, that's my name, and my sail number 5397, you'll find me.
ErinBury, and I Googled that earlier today, and you see her pop up on the various places. Are you making these parts? This is the aforementioned boom, mast boom. What do you call those?
Yes. I happen to know an amazing engineer and professional motorcycle racer who also has a 3D printer, and he can make those out of PETG or Delrin, and they're light. They don't take all that long to make with a 3D printer, and they don't eat up your mast at all. So your nice, pretty carbon fiber mast gets a little bit of a break when you have a nicely and perfectly designed boom jaw.
Well, Alex Kent said, I'd love to try ice boating sometime. Peter Stevenson, a.k.a. Pedro Foiling Sailor, who's down in Sydney normally. He's in Australia. He says, if there's a spare boat, I'm coming, Erin. Blake, is there a spare bed? As well as we are waiting for the ice to freeze. Shame I don't have any ice around. Matthias Collins, who's down in Argentina. John Emmett saying, yeah, that looks like 3D printing. Indeed it is. And speaking of instruction and what you're doing, here you are coaching somebody. That's not Blake, is it?
No, that is not Blake. That is one of the youth ice sailors. He's actually from Minnesota, so it was easy for us to connect and get on the ice together. And I was in this picture, I'm just explaining to him kind of when I say head up and when I say head down, what that means. But he's 14 years old and taller than I am, so he actually didn't even get to play in an ice opti. He went straight to the DN.
Well, that's a point. I guess if you're super tall, you're not going to squeeze into one of the smaller boats. So even if he looks like he's kind of at the length of the cockpit limit here. Now, the main sheet has got, we never had this when I was sailing ice boats, but it looks like you've got some kind of a knotted, what's the term of art for that?
Braided knot?
A braided main sheet.
Yeah.
But it's a series of knots, right? A series of.
Yes. And that just, I think so you do tie it to the end of your tiller so that it doesn't slip through. And what I end up using the braid and the knots for is it makes it easier to kind of wrap around my hand. But also if for whatever reason that knot does break a little bit, there's sometimes a little bit of a buffer before it slips all the way through and you're without a main sheet.
No, that wouldn't be good. Denise Balzac is reminded. Her husband was on we did a couple 3 cups together, didn't we, Denise, in the early days of what was then BMW Oracle Racing. And blow karting in New Zealand did not go well. Yeah, we tried blow karting, which is the closest thing, I guess, to ice boating. Have either of you done blow karting?
I have not yet.
And those, they do have some pretty fast land yachts out at least here in the desert. Here, I'm meaning California. Okay. A lot of interest in that. It's cool. That is very interesting. Now, you're back to this junior that you're instructing. Now, I understand this video is Blake's first time in a boat. Is that right?
No, it's my first time in a DN in 40 years.
40 years. And are you in the lead boat? Are you in her boat?
Yes. I was just crossing in front.
And Erin, you're not driving this boat. You're actually hanging on to the
plank. Yeah, I'm sitting on the plank, and doing all of my yoga skills possible to stay on.
And shooting the video. What kind of a camera are you using?
Just my iPhone.
Oh my God. Now, is this considered to be great ice, this black ice?
This was really good
Yep.
ice. Yeah.
This was on Boxing Day on December 26th. We'd come out on the 25th on Christmas Day with the hope that that would be my first chance to get in Erin's boat. And it was nuking. I think it was blowing like 25 knots. And I'm like, nope, not going to go out in these conditions. And these conditions are where you see the video. We were probably only doing 5 or 8 miles an hour of breeze at the most. And I was doing 30 to 40 knots at times when I was out there.
Cool stuff.
I sailed some nights and a few other ice boats in the last 10 years, but I hadn't been in a DN in forever.
40 years.
Yeah, 40 years.
You going to do some racing, Blake?
We'll see.
Question from Neil Collingridge. Are most people regular sailors who then take up ice sailing, or do some start on the ice and not actually soft water sail?
That's a great question. And it's actually a question that I get a lot. And the answer that I have to that is I think for the most part, they've started some sort of soft water sailing before, but to what degree it can vary. There might be a few out there that have almost exclusively done ice sailing. I just don't know any of them.
Well, I know growing up that there were any number of people who only ice boated, who had an ice boat, stuck it on the lake in the wintertime and went around and didn't care to go soft water sailing in the summer. But mostly, I think for the most part, they were soft water sailors who then ice boated in the winter for fun. So we'll see, probably a little bit of both all over. Do you have to be alert for tree wood at the surface? Stingray is asking.
For like
tree wood or cracks or anything else in the ice?
Yes.
The answer is yes, right?
But not tree wood specifically. That's very rare that you see branches out on the ice. I mean, it can happen, but.
And we have scouters. So especially for a regatta, we will have a series of locations that are hopefully going to be sites for a regatta. And then we have local ice sailors who will go out and measure the ice, and then they'll report back, mostly using our Facebook pages. And, you know, by a couple days before a regatta is supposed to be called on, we make the announcement that says, okay, we've decided it's this lake, ice is this thick, ice is this quality, pack up and meet us there on Friday evening or Saturday morning. So it is a process. We do have scouters, and they're checking for safety, they're checking for quality, and we kind of have this idea that ice is never safe. So you don't go alone, you don't go if it hasn't been scouted. You ask questions. You ask, how thick is it? How cold is it going to be? I mean, we are out there in the elements, and a lot of things can not go exactly how you want it to. But because we have that idea of like ice is never safe, think ice, think safety, that's how we keep the sport safe, and that's how we keep it alive.
For example, on Boxing Day on the 26th, when I went out, the ice was about 4 inches thick, I think, and you could see cracks in it, but it was pretty good ice for the most part. But there were some pressure ridges, and one of the scouts came back and said, yesterday you could sail over there. Not today. There's open water, not open water, not like through the ice, but water on top of the ice that you do not want to be anywhere near.
Yeah, our lake was the same. You know, if it's a really cold winter, it'll freeze a foot or more thick and across the whole surface of the lake. But there's a trickle of water that comes down a creek and through a little sub lake that then comes across the main part of the lake and goes out the river in the southeast corner of the lake. And in the winter, that subtle water movement across the middle of the big part of the south part of our lake was enough to make the ice sometimes dangerously thin, even in the middle of a cold winter. So I can understand what you're saying. To what extent is boat speed versus tactics versus boat handling?
Again, a great question. I would say, as a good example, would be in heavier winds, I should be able to point better than my heavier grown men competitors. So when it is heavier winds, I should actually be sheeting in on that puff and pointing further, like more directly at the mark, where the other guys, they're going to go faster than I am, but I am going to do a lot less distance. So it's tactics. It's tactics for who you are and what you are. And you know what? Like we said, it is nice when you can read the wind a little bit with some water or a snowdrift on there. But at least for me, puff on, I'm pointing closer to that mark.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's really boat speed, isn't it? That's what James Bland is saying. And it's, you're sailing, it's the difference between high rate of speed and not such a good speed is so huge. It's like any other fast paced sailing. It's mostly boat speed, right? You do have to play the shifts, of course. And on a small inland lake, it can be shifty as hell. More importantly, you're sailing through lulls, and you probably know the geography of the lake, and you'll want to sail under the bluff, the hill that blocks the wind, and so on and so forth. Interesting sport. And you start out, I guess, in some parts of the world in an optimist. You call this an opti? What do you call this?
Yeah, an ice opti.
Ice opti. So is that a real opti rig?
That is a real opti rig. And what it is, the hull is pretty much just a smaller DN hull, while the sail, the whole idea behind the optis is that they are accessible and affordable. So that sail is actually a regular softwater opti sail, and you can just take that and plop it on your ice opti, and it's good to go.
And that's good for people up to what size or weight?
I would say if you're just a little bit smaller than I am, that's probably the maximum.
Oh, what is that? What height, what weight is an ice opti good
Maybe
for?
like 4'10" and 100 pounds.
So really, for small people, you're not going to be somebody who's a 6 foot teenager. No. So, what about this buoy? That's a course mark, I guess. I assume. Typical.
Yeah, that's our mark.
How do you hold those down? You go out and put those on the ice. How are they? I see something that looks like a hold down on it. What is?
Yeah, you drill in.
Little ice auger and.
Yeah, exactly. It's an auger.
Okay, I'm learning a lot. I hope everybody else is. Stingray, he's really into it. Are ice shifts larger and more frequent across ice than a summer lake?
What do you think, Blake?
I don't have an answer to that, to be honest.
Well, just from my limited experience, it's puffy on inland lakes. It's puffy any place.
Right.
But it's not as, I don't remember it being nearly as shifty, but I remember it being puffy in the winter, obviously on a small lake.
When I was sailing, there were a couple shifts, and I could feel them and see them because you're along the shores. You've got your apparent wind angle is hot, but you can still see the adjustments at what you can do pretty quickly. But I agree with you that it was more about gusts than it was about shifts. At least
it's wind speed racing, like most high speed racing is. Tom Pace is saying, I raced too long in Europe in winter. These days, if wind chill is below my age, I'm in the bar. John Harper's put a GoPro video on. Somebody will click that. I'm not going to grab that now, John, but thanks for sending. Wind would be more stable because wind stability is related to temperature. Don't confuse stability with shifts. Yeah, that's interesting, Coach John. Emmett is saying. Fritz Mueller is saying hi to you, Blake, from Miami. And let's look at another version of ice yachting.
Here we go.
Blake, give us the voiceover on this.
So when I was a kid, I did not have my own ice boat. They were beyond my price point. And we had local families like the Glicks. Jim Glick was on a few minutes ago making some comments that would loan boats out. But a lot of us had things like a skate sail. And that was my skate sail. That was my first capital sailing purchase at age 11, maybe. For maybe $100. It was a big deal. And that's the same skate sail that I've had for 60 years. And I finally sold to somebody, 50 years. So finally sold to somebody this winter. And what's cool about that video, if you show it again, is what you do is you're actually sitting below on the bar, and when you're tacking, you simply steer with your skates and roll it over your shoulders, over your neck, and that's how you tack.
So that was a tack, and those are hockey skates. Do you use speed skates if you're really serious about this?
Some people did, because Minnesota was a big speed skating place when I was young, but scary enough, when I did it, I didn't play hockey. I wasn't like the Allen family. I had figure skates.
Oh, you were the late great Commodore Anderson, Harry Anderson. We called those fancy skates, by the way.
Yeah, just to think about the toe picks in my figure skates. If I went forward, that was the end of that.
I could never skate in figure skates because of the toe picks. I would always be ass over tea kettle. A couple other comments. This is fascinating for me. Gordon Smith is saying, I have absolutely no experience of this ice sailing sport whatsoever. I did watch some land yachting in Wales, and that was excellent. Wing sailing on ice, J. Frederick. Land, yep. Interesting that wing foiling now, that's becoming very popular. And some people would argue, and I don't want to get anybody upset at me but some people would argue this wing sailing that we're seeing, my brother does it out in Hawaii, on a foiling board is becoming more popular than kiting, than holding on to and flying your kite with the wires and so on. Yeah. Lots of questions. Is your body upwind or downwind of that skate sail?
Downwind.
So you're downwind, and now you're downwind again. So that's why it's a tack. Interesting question. Yeah. You're downwind now, and you're downwind again. The wind's coming from kind of the right side of the screen. Okay, interesting question. A bunch of smart people on here. Tier de Jong, that's what I did in Holland. Raven Cord, he asked the question. Raven, thank you for that. Alex Kent, I wanted to play hockey, but my mom wouldn't let me. Why is that? I had to figure skate instead. Okay, so Alex is a figure skater. I mean, the figure skaters, that is a fabulously popular Olympic sport. Watching the ice dancing last night, and that gets the television ratings in the Winter Olympics, at least. Do any of the ice boats use solid wings? There's a question. Stingray is asking that question. You seen a solid wing yet?
Yes. I actually saw my first, I guess, spotting of one was a few weeks ago in Madison. And we call it the wing boat. They're wing boats. And we actually will be having a few of those in Fort Peck in Montana in a few weeks. And so whenever we get to talk about that international event for ice sailing, we can talk about what those wing boats are going to be like.
Okay, we'll get to that in a sec, but I wanted to look at this historical photo that I guess you sent this, Blake?
Yeah, that's a picture from White Bear Lake, which is just north of St. Paul. And that's a relatively recent picture by Pat Dunsworth, who is a local semi-professional photographer, with an old stern steer, and I think that's the front of a skeeter probably, and I'm pretty sure that's on White Bear Lake.
And there's an old stern dragger.
Yes.
Amazing. That's a great shot. I like the foreground with the new technology and the background technology from more or less the turn of the last century, right. Early 1900s, right? Yep. Speaking of old technology, do you know what this is? This was not sent by either of you. This was sent by one of our foes. Chad Lyons sent this via Steve Atkins, Commodore Atkins in Connecticut. That is a great, they call it a South Bay scooter, but it's from Great South Bay on the south shore of Long Island, Great South Bay. And that is another classic ice boat. You know what that reminds, a Widowmaker, James Bland to say.
With modern Harkin blocks, though, on it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it looks beautifully redone.
Yep.
Beautifully redone. And you know what it reminds me of, this boat? And it looks like, I don't know how they steer the thing. It looks like it's got a rudder and a rudder post there in the back. Isn't that what I suppose this? Or is that the end of the main sheet? Maybe they steer it with their feet, or maybe they steer it by tipping their weight side to side, because I think it has dual rudders on the bottom. You know what it reminds me of?
Or twin ridges or something, maybe, yeah.
It reminds me of an Apple Magic Mouse. That's the old one, the version 1, the version 2, which I had been experimenting with here in the last few days, and I sent it back to Apple. Took it. But you see the two runners on the bottom, I think, and anybody that knows better, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's what this boat here, this Great South Bay boat, I think that's how that thing works.
It's cool.
And I wonder if that's how they steer it. And they've got to have some way to steer it.
True.
Interesting. Oh, wow, the South Bay scooter is just gorgeous, Stingray is saying. Yeah, it really is. Fabulous. No rudder, steers with sails, John Harper. There's the answer. You steer it with the sails, so if you want it to bear off, you ease the main and trim the jib, I guess.
Yep.
And if you want to head up, you move the center of effort aft, trim the main, and ease the jib. Wow.
Yep.
Luge, skeleton, J. Frederick Bland is saying. Tom, they tip or lean. It's a sail bob.
Could
It is
be.
indeed. Great South Bay scooter. Chad Lyons, thank you for that via Steve Atkins, who sent that along when he heard. And that was a picture I grabbed because that's what it looks like to me, an Apple Magic Mouse. Now, Erin, this is a skeeter, and that M stands, I guess, for Montana. And you can see the fuselage. This is the highest tech of the ice boats. Harpoon's got some videos, Harkin, on their website, and they've done a couple of great videos. And of course, you can see the fuselage, just like a fighter jet that you pull that, right? This thing slides forward, and then when you get in it, you pull that over the top of you for a great aerodynamic treatment. And you've got something coming up in Montana, the Hardwater Summit 2022. Tell us about this.
Yeah, for that Hardwater Summit, it's going to be in March at some point. And so if you go to the website, you'll kind of see as much detail as we're able to give out, knowing that ice can be temperamental at times. It might be the first week of March, the second, or the third. But again, updates will be on the website and on the Facebooks. And of course, on my Facebook and Instagram, I'll be posting updates, and you can always ask me questions as well. And this is going to be a first of its kind event. We're inviting sailors from all over the world. It's an opportunity to try the sport and also experience the sport in a different way. So yes, I've been doing the sport for a little bit, but maybe I'll get a chance to try out a Renegade. Maybe I'll get a chance to race in a night. And we're asking people to, if they can, bring someone that is newer to the sport or wanting to try it for the first time, or is a sailor that's experienced in soft water but not hard water yet, and get them in a boat. So kind of one of my homework assignments as someone who's going to be attending this regatta as a sailor is I want to bring a friend who wants to try it out. And one of the races that we'll do is going to be kind of like a relay or an endurance race. So, I'll go around the mark once with my boat, I'll climb out, my friend will hop in, she'll go around again, climb out, and then I'll go around again, and it might be a timed race situation.
Sounds like you need a Heaven Can Wait race. You get Jody Shields up there, maybe he'd come up to Montana. Remember the old movie Hunt for Red October? I think I'll retire. I'll buy me a cabin in Montana. Remember the guy who was the number 2 on the ship, he got shot on the Red October. But let's just go through this again. If you take us through it, this is the Hardwater Summit. It is coming up next month in March in Montana. It's not a regatta. It's a summit. It's a forum. It's for fun. What are you doing? It's in a place called Fort Peck.
It's for fun and for competition. It's not like our Nationals regatta or our Western or Central region regattas. So because this is its inaugural year, so these races are new, and we will have trophies. So if you win a race, if you rank in it, you do get a trophy. And it's more of an opportunity to kind of bring the community together and then help the community grow internationally as a sport and create informed, educated, and passionate sailors within the community.
How many people are you expecting?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I mean, order of magnitude. Are you expecting 50 or 500 or not sure?
My guess would be anywhere between 50 and 100.
Okay, cool. So the window of opportunity, the first half of March is typically the area's best ice sailing, not ice boating, not ice yachting, but ice sailing. So you see, it's these 3 words are used interchangeably. We are planning around a 3-week window from which we will select the best week as conditions are known, either the 14th or the 18th. That's the target week. And then either the week either side of that. So you really have to be ready to go at a moment's notice, right? For one of those 3 weeks. And the host community will be Glasgow. I'm not sure how we pronounce it, Montana. We would say Glasgow in Scotland. Montana, officially labeled, quote, the city in the middle of nowhere. Guys, thank you very much. Last word to the 2 of you.
can tell one more story if you want.
Please, we got all the time, got all afternoon.
1980, I think. And I was in Northern Illinois at a midwinter meeting for the Midwest Collegiate Sailing Association with a friend of mine, teammate of mine from Wisconsin, Green Bay. And we were done with the meeting, driving back to Green Bay. And on the roads through Northern Illinois, through southern Wisconsin, all the way through, we went right through Lake Geneva. When we got to Williams Bay, as we were turning to go around the lake, we could look across the lake and we could see what was clearly big Class A stern steers on the other side of the lake. And as I'm looking at them, I'm thinking to myself, that's right about in front of Melgus's house. And my friend Pat, who was just new to the sport, new to racing, I should say, he's like, Buddy Melgus? Yeah. We should stop by. Stop by his house? Yeah. So we drove around the lake. I'd stayed with the Melgus family. Thank you. Good picture of Buddy and Gloria.
Buddy, buddy.
I had stayed with the Melgus family in their boathouse for some regattas in the previous couple of years. And we drove up into their driveway, and we walked up, and I walked right in. And Pat is like, you're walking right in? You're not knocking? Like, yeah. Because Gloria told me, don't knock, just come in. Of course, this was 1980. Maybe things have changed since then. And immediately, Gloria came over and gave me a hug. And Buddy was standing there with Bill Benson, a gentleman whose name I forget, and both Buddy's sons, Harry and Hans, who are now both in their 50s, but then were teenagers. And Buddy looks at me and says, Mr. Middleton, you are right on time. We need more people. We're going ice boating. Are you ready? Yes, I'm ready, of course.
What a great story.
And Pat is sitting there going, we're going sailing on ice boats with Buddy Melgus? Yes. So Pat went on with Bill Benson, and I went on with Buddy and Harry on his boat. And this thing was a monster, and it was blowing pretty good. It was blowing 15 and 20 knots. And we were on Lake Geneva isn't quite as wide as Lake Minnetonka. And it wasn't long before we were literally across the lake. It's like time to turn. And the Class A stern steer, when it starts coming off the ice, it's scary as hell. In the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, oh my God. Oh, never mind. I'm with Buddy Melgus, who at that point was, I think, arguably still potentially be seen as the best sailor in the world at that point, or pretty close to it. And I'm
certainly the best sailor out of this country. Well, you can talk about Dennis, you can talk about a number of other people, but
I mean, in terms of various epics of different sailing, that was certainly true then. And we are going so fast we can't believe it. So Buddy's driving. I've got the main. Harry's got the jib. And the boat is. You heard the noise from Erin's video of how the ice is shaking. You should have heard the sound that this Class A stern steer is going through the ice. Holy cow! And at one point, Buddy, who was kind of famously a little bit loud and angry toward things, people, and so forth, he was starting to mutter under his breath and using language that Julia would do this to me for, which I won't repeat, obviously. And I heard him say something like, I said, what's wrong? He goes, something's wrong. We're not moving up to speed. And I said, how fast and I'm right next to him. My head is literally as close as mine is to Erin right now. And we're just flying along. I said, how fast do you think we're going? He goes, oh, I don't know, not much over 100. And maybe we weren't. That's my story. I'm sticking to it for the rest of my life.
And that was a Renegade. And for those that aren't completely familiar, it was a what? It was a Renegade?
No, it's a Class A.
Oh, it's a big Class A. And
it's Class A's.
And there's two people sitting side by side in the back, right? And then a third person sitting in front, also in the cockpit and the fuselage, and not trimming the jib, right? And you said that was Harry.
We're all kind of in a basket in the back of the boat.
Oh, we're all three side by side?
Yes.
Well, that's the way that worked. And I remember we had the big polar bears, which were the stern steers, and you sit two aside. You didn't put anybody else in. There wasn't really room for that. What a great story. The Wizards of Zenda, Gloria, and Buddy Melgus. And a couple of other comments. Great story, Blake, from Stingray. Great story, Sandy Anderson. We're Tannen, Glasgow. They're making a snide comment about Minneapolis. No place. Okay. What a great show. I learned so much. I wish I were younger with a stronger back. Julie Aaron's in Cleveland. Thanks, Julie. Confirmed 4 runners. We are Lake Superior family. Stingray wants to know. He's coming. I think you don't be surprised if Stingray shows up.
Of course.
I'll tell you his real name offline. And he says, what's the closest airport? Do you know the closest airport?
For Minneapolis or Montana?
No, for Glasgow, Montana.
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Better figure out where to fly into. Hey guys, thank you very much.
Yes, and can I say a few more
Please
things?
do.
Yay. So our first project for actually showing people how these boats can be built and how you can really get into the sport is Nomadic Boatworks and I are going to partner with the Turtle Island Center for Excellence in Environmental Science and Research in Ontario, Canada. It is on a reservation helping Indigenous children get into a healthy sport that they can do in the winter and that they can work on in the summer. You can work on your boat in the summer and you can play with it in the winter. And so we're helping get that off the ground. So just pay attention to that. It's a really cool thing. And it's going to be kind of us launching that program of showing how these boats can be made and how you can get into it. And then also keep your eyes peeled for something from Quantum Sales and myself. We've got some entertainment pieces coming out. It's Quantum's first ever look into ice sailing. And if you want a chance to win something from a local sailing and boating clothing line, you can enter the Superpower initiative on my Instagram. It's all about empowering people to share what they're great at. And I want to highlight people that are getting after it. And I also want to highlight how awesome people can be and how they can share it and not be afraid of not being humble enough.
Well, that's a problem we don't have on this show. That is, we're always humble. Rarely in error, but never in doubt. And Blake, Erin, thank you very much indeed. It's been terrific to have you on. Keep us posted because, send us some more videos. I'll keep feeding them in. And when you know what's going on in Ontario, when you know more about what's going on in Montana, moving to Montana, you're too young, Erin, to remember that song. Blake will remember that song. Chris Bulger, great to see the class building. Julie Aarons, you need to have these folks on again. I'd love to see how the boats are built. So very cool. Thanks, Erin and Blake. Awesome show. Jim Glick is saying, hello, Jim again. Welcome to you. Chris, we saw him on earlier. Great, Chris Bulger, great to see the class building passion. Yes, and that's what our video today is about. We've got from John Emmett coming up in a couple of minutes. What an absolutely great show today. Stingray is saying, thanks so much, Blake and Erin. And on and on. So go back, as Julia always says, go back and read the comments. And thanks to you both very much indeed. Keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ciao. Ciao, ciao. Thanks. Just before we wrap up talking about ice boating and Scout Country and so on, we talked about Buddy and Gloria Malgus, but I also want to just really dedicate the show to Buddy and Gloria, but also to the denizens of Scout Country and ice boating. Peter Harkin, his late great brother Olaf, two of the great people in the modern history of our sport, engineers, sailors, great guys, helpful. And his wife, Dr. Edith Harkin and Peter have been on this show. They're Fozy. And I couldn't go through talking about ice boating and talking about Wisconsin and Minnesota and so on without talking about my dear longtime friend Harkoon and his, 10 years now. I was going to say new wife, but they've been married for, I think, 10 years. She's the famously good dermatologist who, and they got Harkin Derm that's, helps sailors and so on. And you talk about ice boating, you got to have sunscreen on too when you're ice boating. You're out because the sun in the wintertime is very intense indeed. Great stuff. Thank you very much. Let's see what other comments we've got here. Thanks. Nice show. Visa Karhusari, and I hope I didn't get too far off the track with that pronunciation. Visa in Finlandia. Interesting. Yeah, it was terrific having all of you on for that. Let's get on with the rest of our show. We're into the C block now, and listen to what John Emmett has to say, because he's also talking about other classes, not just Olympic classes, and class building in his submission today. Train hard, sail easy, our master mentor and Olympic coach, John Emmett.
Hi Tom, Julia and all the Fozy. Really nice to be doing a little report today about restart sailing. This is something that started quite a long time ago with the pandemic and continues to be relevant today. Maybe not so much as restarting sailing, but resetting it. One of the joys I've had is actually speaking to people from classes that are highly successful, but perhaps I've never even heard of. A good example of an extremely active class is the Supernova. They have over 100 boats at the Nationals, but to be honest, I didn't know much about the class until they appeared on the show. I hope you enjoy the video that shows what a lovely boat it is, just another example of how the single-handed classes have been updated in recent times. The idea is that there's a boat out there for absolutely everybody, and people can find a boat that suits them and their sailing style. I look back at all the different podcasts and interviews that I've done over the last couple of years, and I think it will be a piece of history. In fact, it seems strange to see on YouTube when things flash up and we're all wearing masks. But that is actually an important thing to remember. Restart Sailing has given us an opportunity to start with a clean sheet of paper, and hopefully it's helped people realise just how important sailing is. So, here we go with another very exciting class, the Supernova. Enjoy and see you on the rest of the show.
John Emmett. And the interesting class is somebody's asking here, what are the biggest differences between the Supernova and the Ilka? Stingray was asking that. And apparently it's the fully battened rig, John Emmett is saying he's still on, and the shrouded mast, because it's of course, the Ilka is an unstayed mast. You can see here the stays on this boat. It looks quite a bit more technical, in fact. But interesting that class is so popular and continue. There's so many classes in our country. We talk about the Interlake class, Joe Holtzman and Clark Chapin are on here, the Thistle, the Snipe, the Lightning, dozens of other classes all over the world, some that are indigenous only to one country, some that have spread out over the years, but cool stuff. And I also want to say that I gave John hell when I got that video this morning, and I said, where's the picture of you? The Fozy are going to want to know what you look like. Please take a selfie of me, of you, so that we can show it here on the show. And he did. Just freshly out of the shower. And looks like he hasn't shaved in quite some time, but his eye looks a lot better. So, John, thank you for that picture. We appreciate it very much. I wish I still had my Force 5. Wet Hog is saying, well, a Wet Hog is on normally from Annapolis, International OK Dinghies. Yeah, cool boat. Pretty big rig, Alan Long is observing about that boat we were just looking at. Rockstar John with his, yeah. Ted Ryman, checking in from Cape Town in the South Africa. It is time for this day in history, the 15th of February. And if Julia were here, she is not, as you know. if she were here, she would know the answer to this. What happened, without me having given her any clues, what happened in 399 BC? Hamish Ross sent me a note saying, oh, it's Canada's Flag Day, but we use that at the top of the show as to, what day is this? What is being celebrated today? But what happened in this day in history in 399 BC? And as usual, David James comes up with the answer. He must research this in advance of the show. Socrates was sentenced to death in 399 BC, or BCE if you're politically correct. He wasn't exactly Plato, but influential nonetheless. Stingray was asking if that was the year that Biden was born. President Biden, I don't think so. That's not very polite, Stingray. And you're a Democrat, so I would surprise you said that. Probably on show 47. This was a calendar. Was there a calendar then? Well, David James had it right. This is the day, supposedly, on which Socrates, like Cher, like Gaga, there's not too many people that have one name, Dennis. And maybe these days you could say John, and everybody knew we were talking about John Emmett. Buddy, you'd know who that was. Socrates is teaching in Athenian circa 410 BCE, before the current era, BC, before Christ. Socrates was, of course, the influential philosopher. There is going to be a sailing connection. In ancient Athens, in the 5th century BC, he is famous for his Socratic method, a dialectic method of inquiry whereby a series of questions is asked to establish a person's beliefs or knowledge, which we're very happy to use here. Socrates is also remembered for the manner of his death in 399 BC. Supposedly on this date, he was convicted in Athens in a one-day trial, no less, of corrupting the minds of the youth with this philosophy, the youth of Athens, and impiety. And if Julia were here, I'd go to Julia and say, now, Julia, tell us what you went to Stanford. Tell us what impiety is. And impiety, of course, means teaching contrary to the state about gods, about the state's beliefs. Maybe that's what's going on up in Canada right now. Okay, that was a political joke. Corrupting the minds of the youth of Athens and impiety. His pupils and associates, as a couple of you mentioned, were Plato and Xenophon. Recorded his end in a series. He never wrote apparently much stuff, but they wrote things about him. Sentenced to death by hemlock poisoning, Socrates refused to accept the offer of escape, choosing to become a martyr to respect the wishes of the state, willingly drank the hemlock. Controversial in his own time, Socrates had a profound effect on Western philosophy, at least in the ancient world and beyond, and is regarded today as the father of Western philosophy. Here's a bit of a sailing connection, and it gets better than this. Can anyone, Hamish Ross, you're on here, or any of our Australian foes, identify the location of this arguably most famous statue of Socrates? Hamish Ross, good law schools still use the Socratic method to teach students. Indeed. Chris Exley, Socrates conducted most of his dialogues while walking around a garden. So did Steve Jobs. Where is this bust? Where is this statue? David James, to our knowledge, Socrates never wrote anything. He asked questions. Plato wrote it down. Fritz Mueller, neither the Julian nor Gregorian calendars were around then, half to time travel. Well, okay, but that's what Wikipedia and many others suggest was the date. Here's the answer. Do you know where that bust is? It's a bust by Victor Wager, and it's at the University of Western Australia. Bust completed in 2004 for the University of WA, which of course was founded by Alan Bond, right? And it is where that little pinpoint is in Crawley. There's Perth. There's Crawley. That's where the University of WA is. And of course, down to Fremantle and East Fremantle. We lived during the Cup, Fremantle, Dalkeith, nice neighborhood. We also lived over here in what's Cottesloe. But that bust is at the University of Western Australia. And on this day, as you've all pointed out, philosopher Socrates is sentenced to death by the city of Athens for corrupting the minds of the youth of the city and for impiety. I love that. I learned something. We should have all known that, John Mangino is saying. Yes, indeed, we should have. But wait, there's a better connection. to sailing than just the University of Western Australia. By the way, did you know that the University of WA is the first free admission college in the British Empire or in the Commonwealth? I didn't know that. It was the first. But here's the other Socratic connection. Do you know who this lady is? Somebody should be able to identify her, especially if you're a Canadian, maybe if you're a Brit, maybe if you are from Leamington in the UK, which is from whence she is. Her name is Jean Socrates, I kid you not, from Great Britain, originally from Leamington. And this is why she is famous in our sport.
Welcome back. Thank you.
77-year-old British woman, the first to sail around the world alone, nonstop and unassisted. This was just a few years ago.
On the side of the boat, there's a lot of damage.
No, she's not a Royal Stingray. It took the Hampshire sailor 320 days in her 11-meter yacht. Despite storm damage, she started from Victoria, Canada,
This as one of the
and returned.
greatest voyages of all time. A 77-year-old woman who's battled unbelievable hardships on this trip. She's looking forward to having a very long hot bath and then eating a lovely meal and a nice glass of wine.
That's a friend of hers. Thanks to the Guardian for that. The 77-year-old woman started in Victoria. I think my graphic there is covering up her path, but she did all the capes, and she returned after 320 days and lived to talk about it. She was originally the oldest woman to make the trip in 2013, and then she completed this trip to become the oldest person in 2018, 2019. Jean Socrates. There, I told you there'd be a sailing connection here. I don't know from where her name came, but she's got to be a cool gal if anybody knows her. I hope she's still around. Jean Socrates at the Royal Victoria Yacht Club in Canada after finishing her solo nonstop circumnavigation in September, I think it was, of 2019. Cup news. We're not going to talk too much about the Cup, but I can tell you that one hears that there is a new initiative forthcoming in Auckland. And they're going to make another push. That is the Kiwi Home Defense, another initiative to put pressure on the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron and Emirates Team New Zealand. And it may even be being backed by the government. I'm not quite so sure about that, but that is still going on. Do not count out Auckland as the next venue. Mr. Dunphy on the left, Mark Dunphy, is putting pressure, and there's going to be a renewed effort to put pressure on the squadron and ETNZ by Mr. Dunphy and by Jim Farmer. And also this gentleman continues to say that if the Cup goes offshore, that is out of New Zealand, anywhere, not just Jeddah, but if it goes anywhere, this retired judge, Sir Edmund Thomas, a.k.a. Ted, Sir Ted, the prominent retired judge and a former Supreme Court member of their Supreme Court, justice on their Supreme Court, is going to go to court, and this thing's going to get tied up. But there's another initiative coming. Stand by. A lot of money is going to be spent to promote this initiative and to raise more money and to help, they say, make sure the Cup remains in Auckland. Now, you may have seen some of the news about Auckland. That is the news about Auckland. You may have seen some of the news about Malaga. There was a picture of Matteo Denora, who is the team principal, has been one of the senior series, a big donor to Grant Dalton and to ETNZ over the last few Cups. And he was meeting in Dubai with officials from Malaga. I think that is window dressing. I think it is a red herring. I would not hold my breath about Malaga because it's just, as we've been saying, it trying to raise the money in this era from government sources to have the Cup with public money and a combination certainly of private money is a big ask. Likewise in Cork. So I'm hearing more and more about Jeddah, maybe Abu Dhabi, but it sounds like there's a deal with Jeddah. There's money on the table, and this could be where they are intending to go. But if that's the case, I think those aforementioned gentlemen, at least Mr. Farmer, Jim Farmer QC, and Sir Ted, the retired judge, are not going to have a bar of it, as you would say in New Zealand, and it will end up, God forbid, in court. One also hears, again, as we've been telling you on this show for weeks, if not months now, that the Cup may well get delayed. They're starting to have a discussion with the other challengers about delaying the Cup to 2025. That is the America's Cup, the 37th edition thereof. More on our show on Friday. Let's turn to SailGP news and the Jody Shields segment. Correct or Crutonic? And I ask you, who is this gentleman? Speaking of Canada, a lot of Canada on this show today. That is Mr. Fred Pye, who we told you actually a couple months ago now, is the owner of the new SailGP Team Canada. And it was announced a couple days ago by Mr. Pye that he has a new CEO, as a gentleman I won't go into now, but he also has a new driver. They've announced their driver, their helmsman, for their team. Have a look, and then I'll ask you.
It gives you a sense of freedom.
Is it correct or Crutonic?
You're in nature, you're dictated to by nature, and you've got to sort of take it all in and understand it better and use it against your competitors. It's such a unique sport. What I bring to this team is a lot of experience in starting from a very similar platform, and that's starting from zero. I've brought two teams up to a pretty high level, and look, I'm ready to bring that experience into this team and do it better. I'm not going to lie, I'm bloody excited about this challenge. This team, this culture, it motivates me, and I can't wait to get this thing off the ground. I'm Phil Robertson, and I'm driving Canada into the future. Let's go.
Okay, so there you have it. Phil Robertson, the Kiwi, the esteemed match racer, terrific sailor in general, who has been with Team China, who's been with Team Spain and SailGP, is now the driver for, Canada. Been announced here in the last couple days. And I ask you, is this correct or Crutonic? With all the good sailors in Canada, that big country, but apparently Russell Coutts and Mr. Pye have decided that it's better to have an experienced person who's helped bring teams along, notably China and also, of course, Spain. Now he's this journeyman. He's going to drive, he's going to skipper, helm, the Canadian SailGP team. Is it correct or Crutonic, or should it be a Canadian? You tell me. What do you say? James Frederick Bland, well, it's Commonwealth. Gordon Smith, who's always been pretty open-minded about this, says it's correct. Chris Exley says, go Phil, it's correct. John Mangino, Philly. J. Frederick Bland is saying, follow the money. Well, of course, I don't begrudge anybody the money. Stingray, correct. Phil Robertson knows how to start teams in SailGP. Ed Worley is saying, no, it's Crutonic. It should be a Canadian. Emmett, John is asking, which Canada sailor would you suggest? Well, I'm sure there are any number, John. I can't think of one offhand, but that's okay. Ryman is saying it's correct. Mangino said he helped Team China with their AC-45. Jonathan Frank is saying, good for him. World Series. So most of you think that's fine, that is correct. And frankly, I do too. I think Alan Long is agreeing it's correct. And I can. The right question was asked by somebody. Who in Canada would you name? Who asked that? Who said that? Maybe it was Emmett. I think John said that. So yeah, what other comments? Phil's the man. They need that leadership from the world's top foiling racers. This is just what Canada needs. Tom Pace is saying, keep the competition tight. Good for the show. Jonathan Frank agrees. Whatever they do, they'll apologize for it. Sorry. Julie Aarons, I'm happy for Phil. If Canada had somebody as experienced, it would be nice to have a Canadian. Is correct. I agree. I think I agree with the majority of you that, Prince Harry. Mangino says, get Prince Harry on the helm. Well, he was at the Super Bowl. I don't know if that makes him qualified. He didn't take his wife. But Prince Harry was there as well. Clark Chapin, final comment to Clark. Hey, it gets a new team to the starting line with an experienced skipper. Just the jump start they need. Okay, good. Okay, well, let's get us to the D block, to the final block. And I have just one submission for Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. This from Ted Ryman. And this is too much. You know where that is? Do you know what that is? No, that is not Victor Felicia's boatyard down in Phoenix, Arizona. That is not Midwest Aquatics, Clark Chapin, at Portage Lake. They're across the road. That is a report from the South African Police Service. Yesterday, a man was arrested for possession of suspected stolen boats and trailers. A 60-year-old man was arrested by the police in Fontainebleau in Linden, outside of Cape Town, after 18 boats and 19 trailers suspected to be stolen were found on his premises yesterday, on Monday the 14th. The owner of the business was arrested and charged with fraud, contravention of secondhand goods, and contravention of Road Traffic Act, and more charges might be added later. Thanks to Ted Ryman, our Fozy from Cape Town, for that. I guess he's going to resell those boats and make money. I don't know, but they're all there. He hasn't been selling them very actively. Maybe he's got a boat fetish. I don't know. What else? China team abandoned boats in Valencia. Yeah, Wet Hog. Good point. So everybody seems to think that's correct. Stingray, 95% of SailGP Canada will be Canadian. All good. Okay, nice. So judgmental. Ha ha. I think he's talking about this report out of South Africa. Yeah, what else can we say? Which brings us to the finish line today. And I have a 2-minute video. If you can stay, please do. We're 2 hours and 20 minutes in. Thanks again to Erin and to Blake. That was, I think, a very popular segment. But the finish line is here, and I just want to thank one of our Fozy down in Auckland. I don't know, you talk about a fetish. I seem to like these yachts, these classic yachts, and the classic yacht racing that's going on down there. Yeah, John Mangino saying maybe that guy in South Africa is going to start his own yacht club. But look at this beautiful footage from Roger Mills, our Fozy down in Auckland, of this race between these two classic yachts from the turn of the last century, early part of the 1900s. Hamish Ross is on here. He'll tell you more about these boats because he has one, not one of these two, I don't believe. Hamish says that's around 240 years of yachts in that picture. Way cool, Ken Saban says. I couldn't agree more. I just think it's cool. Literally, they don't make them like that anymore, Clark is saying. I saw this video and I said, you know, someday we're just going to do a show with a series of videos like this. Sublime. Hamish, I want an invitation to come down to Auckland next time we're there and sail on your boat with Brad Butterworth and your others, co-owners and regular crew. I think their boat is A7. Rainbow, I think is the name of their boat. Stunning. Wing and wing, or trying to go wing and wing downwind. Hey, look at how close the racing is. Amy says any of the Fozies are welcome to sail with us. Ted Ryman queuing in saying beautiful boats. Sailing as it is supposed to be, feeling the boat and the waves and wind. Ed Worley, that's as good a summary, I think, of that very nice video by our Fozy Roger Mills down in Auckland, who's got a YouTube channel. By the way, I got to know him during the Cup, and he was sending snippets, taking snippets of videos of the Cup boats from shore. In his YouTube channel, he's, I think, a professional photographer. Hummingbird Video and Photography. Great stuff. That's our finish line segment today. If Julia were here, she's not, sadly, but hopefully she'll be back with us on Friday. She's coming good. I was up to see her this morning, but take her a coffee. Comments, welcome too, even in replay. And if you're watching here live. Go back and read the comments if you hadn't had a chance, because there's a stunning group of comments today. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated to help keep us on the air. And I hope I got most of the credits, and I'm sure I missed a few because there were so many great assets today, video, visual, and otherwise, for today's show. Roger Hamish Ross says, does a wonderful job. Julie Erin saying, beautiful, so calming. Stingray, best wishes. Julie, yep, hope Julia comes good. She's pretty good. She's better than she was Friday, and I think she'll be with us this coming Friday. Tier DeYoung, thank you. Thanks, Gordon Smith. She needs a little rum. Mangino's saying, yeah, well, maybe we'll get her some tequila. She's not been having much tequila. Chris Exley, Erin and Blake were amazing, indeed. And any of you that have a similar topic like Erin and Blake, remember, Blake's a longtime friend, and I said, hey, can you put together something on ice boating? And he said, well, let me get my friend Erin, and we'll send you some slides and videos. And they did, and they were fabulous. Thanks again to both of them. Thanks again to all of you for watching. We hope you have a great rest of your week. I've been talking nonstop for 2.5 hours. And hope to see you on Friday. In the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun.